Me like war.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian with you guys. It's the online news show. So Casper, we got a lot on our plate today. Tremendous updates on the Iran war. The war crimes have begun. I think that the Iranians are laying a trap for us. I want to talk about that a little bit. And then the MAGA civil war continues. Now Trump is taking on Tucker Carlson. So huge clash, two heavyweights. Which side are people going to wind up on? And gas prices are up. The White House is panicking over that. Kristi Noem's been fired. Who's going to replace her? Why did she actually get fired? We have that information as late breaking news, theoretically moved, but tons to get to, obviously. So, Anna, take it away.
Yes. Well, we begin with the latest in regard to what President Trump is planning for Iran. And it seems to change depending on which day we're dealing with. But nonetheless, let's get into it.
Well, most of the people we had in mind are dead. So, we had some in mind from that group that is dead. And now we have another group, they may be dead also, based on reports. So I guess you have a third wave coming in. Pretty soon we're not going to know anybody.
Well, that was our president, Donald Trump, reflecting on all the various individuals who have been killed in Iran, including individuals that he thought might be a good replacement for the now assassinated Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And now we're also learning, Cenk, that he has gone from not really having a plan for what should happen after the IRCG falls to now suddenly wanting to handpick who will be the leader of a country of 92 million people. Before we continue, your 2 cents?
Yeah, so I've got a theory as to why all the people that we wanted as replacements are dead. I want to get back to that in a minute. But most importantly in this story, the president's detachment from reality is super dangerous. So Anna's going to tell you some facts here about what he thinks. Then we'll come back and talk about why that's so dangerous for us. Go ahead, Anna.
So Trump had an 8-minute long conversation with reporters over at Axios. Barack Ravid is one of them. And in that conversation, Trump allegedly said that he needs to be personally involved in selecting Iran's next leader, just as he did in Venezuela. Okay, and it's interesting because he keeps citing Venezuela, even though we're talking about two very different situations, two very different countries. And more importantly, with the case of Iran, you have Israel making demands, and that complicates the matter, to say the least. Now, he believes that the likely replacement for Khamenei, who happens to be Khamenei's son, Mojtaba, is an unacceptable person to lead Iran. Okay, so he says they are wasting their time. Khamenei's son is a lightweight. I have to be involved in the appointment, like with Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela. Like this guy, as Crystal Ball says on Breaking Points over and over again, and it's true, is high off his own supply. He looks at Venezuela and thinks, I'm miraculous, I'm amazing, I can make amazing things happen, this will be easy. And I don't think that's a mistake, Cenk. I think he's surrounded by yes men who gave him the false impression that this operation in Iran, regime change in Iran, would be simple. Further, he says that Khamenei's son is unacceptable to me. We're talking about a felon here, by the way. That's Trump, of course. We want someone that will bring harmony and peace to Iran. So we have our felon president essentially determining or attempting to determine who should lead, again, a country of 92 million people. And then Trump also compared the Iran succession to his intervention in Venezuela during a presser with the media recently. He talked about Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela yet again. Let's take a look at how that went down.
I mean, Venezuela was so incredible because we did the attack and we kept government totally intact. And we have Delcy, who's been very good. We have the whole chain of command, and they've been, look, the relationship's been great.
Now, in the case of Venezuela, Trump didn't necessarily want regime change, which is why the regime is still in charge in Venezuela. In the case of Iran, it doesn't matter what the president of the United States wants. What matters is what the prime minister of Israel wants, and Israel wants full-blown regime change. They don't simply want to replace Khamenei with another hardliner while keeping the IRCG intact. So this is going to be a lot more difficult for Trump than I think he even realizes.
Yeah, so first, I know this is a little random, but I want to go back to him saying, oh, the replacements are dead. There's a point that no one else is making. Look, guys, how did we know where they were going to have that meeting with the Ayatollah and their top 49 leaders? Very, very likely, normally what happens in those situations is human intel. So someone on the inside is working with us or the Israelis, and they're telling us where they normally meet, when they normally meet, and that's how we know, right? Apparently, we killed those people because they were inside the building. So they didn't wait for them to come out. They didn't wait for their favorite guys. So they're like, oh, our own guys are inside the building, the ones that we thought might take over Iran after we kill the rest of the leadership. Who cares? Who cares that they were working with us? Kill them all. Okay, I mean, you've got whatever questionable morality exists in that case. I'm not even gonna get into that. But in terms of strategy, well, that's pretty dumb. So if you had a couple of guys picked out that you thought could be your Delcy Rodriguez, and you were so impatient you just killed them all right, well, no wonder you don't know what the hell is going on. But now to the second point, way more important. This is not normal, guys, and this is not attached to reality. So in Venezuela, apparently the CIA did good work, which is, you don't often hear me saying, because they knew something we didn't know, which is that, yes, they learned from the Iraq war that the de-Baathification didn't work, where that was Saddam's regime, and they tried to get rid of the whole regime, and it led to guerrilla warfare, insurgencies that were endless, right? So they're like, okay, let's not make that mistake again. Let's go in there and make a deal with Delcy Rodriguez and whoever else is second, third, fourth in charge, so that when we take out Maduro, they'll be in charge and we'll have a deal behind the scenes. Okay, well played strategically, whether you again think that was the right thing to do or not. I don't think it was the right thing to do. But overall, strategically, I get it, and I allowed them to have a smooth transition. In this case, there's no such thing at all, and everybody knows it, and Trump knows it, the Israelis know it, we all know it. No, the Iranian regime is 100% against us, Israel, Trump. One of their clerics today talking about how they're gonna try to kill Trump, and they're gonna try to kill as many Zionists as they can. And I love the description in the media about that. They're like, there's shocking, threats. Why is that shocking? We killed all their leaders. So of course they're gonna try to kill our leaders. We killed their their people, they're gonna try to kill our people. And then, so the regime is completely dug in, and their foreign minister has said, no, we are not interested in a ceasefire. Last time doing a ceasefire was a mistake on our part. It encouraged Israel and America and they thought we were weak. No, we should have kept hitting them. So from now on, no more ceasefires. Let's go all the way. Okay.
In fact, Cenk, I apologize for interrupting you, but the foreign minister of Iran, Abbas Araghchi, also told NBC News that they're ready for a US ground invasion. So they're not even debating whether or not a ground invasion is gonna happen. They have already begun preparing for it.
Yeah, in fact, he said something along the lines of, come and find out. He's like, we're totally ready for you, can't wait. And it makes sense. Why does that make sense? Well, who wants a ground invasion of their country? Well, that's where we get into a quagmire. The minute you can put the troops in, what you've done is you've gift wrapped Americans to kill over there. So when we're here in America, the Iranians have no chance of killing us. But when we take our boys and girls and we put them into the middle of Iran, they're like, oh, thank you. Couldn't ask for anything better. Much easier to kill them now. So that's exactly what happened in Iraq. And by the way, is the IDF gonna go in on the ground? Of course not. No, they're gonna send the Americans to die, right? So now guys, the most important part, that's utterly delusional to think that you could tell that dug-in regime, oh, I'm gonna tell you who to appoint. Like, what are you talking about, you idiot? We're trying to kill you. You're gonna tell us? You're now bombing hospitals and schools. The entire Iran has now rallied around the flag, just like we told you they would. And they're like, you think you're gonna dictate stuff to us? Come and find out, come and find out. Look guys, it doesn't matter who you think is right or wrong in terms of like, oh, maybe we'll destroy them on the ground and we hate them and all that stuff. None of that matters. What matters and is super important is the president aware of reality or is he in la la land? And Anna, I think his advisors tell, oh, it's gonna be easy. They're cashing checks from Israel and go push it, go in. You're gonna be the king of the whole world. You got this, right? But only a child would believe stuff like that. I mean, if I was the president, I'd go, okay, wait, do we have a deal like we did with Delcy? And who's going to be next? And what are we gonna do? How are we gonna effectuate that? Trump doesn't ask any of those questions. Oh, I'll tell them who their leader should be. You're at war with them. This is not like Venezuela where they gave up instantly. We're in the middle of a war and you think you're gonna tell them who their leader is gonna be. No, it's a big problem that our president is insane, doesn't know anything.
So guys, if you don't trust me or Cenk in simply saying that, that's totally fine. But I always like to provide some receipts, okay? So we have now shown you so many different polls that indicate that this is not a popular war. The American people do not want this. Nonetheless, Trump had an interview with Politico, and I'm gonna read you an excerpt from one of their pieces. Donald Trump has brushed off concerns over any backlash sparked by the US-Israeli military operation against Iran, saying the public is loving it. In an interview with Politico, the US president said, quote, people are loving what's happening, end quote. He added, we're taking out a threat to the United States of America, major threat, and doing it like nobody's ever seen before. But here's the thing, guys. Americans are, I think, in a lot of ways, way more informed today compared to the lead up to the war in Iraq in 2003. And the reason why I say that is because a lot more people are relying on, diverse sources of news. Yes, there's social media. Yes, there are some issues with independent sources not being entirely accurate. But I think one thing that Americans generally understand is that Iran was not an imminent threat or a threat at all to the United States of America. Most Americans who are paying attention to political news or are engaged in politics know that Iran did not have, the military capability or the weaponry necessary to strike the United States. And so you're seeing stories go viral of Marine veterans protesting this war in front of the Senate and getting their arms broken about it. Those stories are getting traction because most Americans are sympathetic to what that Marine veteran is feeling. And so people know what this war is really about. It's not about benefiting the United States. It's about carrying out the best wishes of a foreign country, and we're not getting anything out of it. So this notion that Americans love it and that they're really happy with Trump because he's protecting us from an imminent threat is like one of the most delusional things I've heard him say. And that signals to me, Cenk, that he is surrounded by people, advisors, who are hardcore defenders of Israel and are literally lying to him about what the public is actually thinking right now.
Yeah, we've got two problems, right? One is we've got a mad king, and the other is that his advisors are totally corrupt. And they're deluding him. They're like, oh yeah. I mean, yesterday Anna covered a story about how Netanyahu found out through people in the White House that Donald Trump wasn't listening to him perfectly. Like, why are you informing the other leader of a different country about what you're secretly talking about inside the White House? That sounds like treason.
It's even worse. It's even worse than that. Okay, so the Israelis were spying on the US, on the administration, and it turns out that there was some concern by Benjamin Netanyahu that Trump was having secret talks about possible de-escalation with the Iranians. And Netanyahu and the Israelis were very concerned that the war would end before they finish or complete all of their objectives.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
So his advisors are constantly telling him, do what Netanyahu says, do what Israel says. Oh, we got this, sir. Like, because Netanyahu wants them to keep going and going and going, trying to knock out as much of Iran's defenses as he can, to do God knows what with Iran later, etc. And so, but meanwhile, we're getting deeper and deeper into the war, and the American people like it less and less. But since the Mad King is detached from the people and has no idea what's going on, they're like, sir, yes, of course. When you tell people that the immigrants are eating cats and dogs, they immediately believe it. If you shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, they would love that, okay? So, and of course, just tell them that the American people love this war. Of course they do. And he's like, I knew it. I knew they love this war. But guys, when we have an idiot like that who's just can't even understand that his own staffers and insiders are treating him like a fool, then how are we gonna win a war when our commander-in-chief is a moron that doesn't understand reality at all, and he just thinks he could lie his way through any of this? No, when you're in the middle of war, lying and trying to do better marketing isn't gonna help you at all. And so I'm super worried.
Well, what also doesn't help is that Trump seems to have an affinity for freezing out anybody who tells him anything he doesn't want to hear, right? So that brings us to our next story. Take a look.
I've reached out to several of the president's most prominent supporters in his movement to get the reaction to this momentous decision to launch a wide-scale attack on Iran. I just heard back from Tucker Carlson, and his answer, he told me the president's decision is, quote, absolutely disgusting and evil.
As you can imagine, Donald Trump did not take kindly to that statement from Tucker Carlson. And so as a result, he is retaliating against the former cable news host and is booting Tucker Carlson out of the MAGA club, thanks to his aggressive criticism of this war against Iran on behalf of Israel. Now, before we give you his full statement, Cenk, your 2 cents.
So who's gonna join Tucker in this rebellion against Trump on MAGA? And who's gonna win that argument? Well, there's evidence on both sides. But first, let's give you the details of this fight.
So ABC's Jonathan Karl posted on X this afternoon, writing that in a lengthy conversation just now, President Trump hit back at Tucker Carlson, who called the Iran war absolutely disgusting and evil. Quote, Tucker has lost his way, Trump told me. I knew that a long time ago, and he's not MAGA. MAGA is saving our country. MAGA is making our country great again. MAGA is America first, what a lie. And Tucker is none of those things. And Tucker is really not smart enough to understand that. Look, delusional, like absolutely delusional in every way, shape, or form. How is fighting a war on behalf of a foreign country America first? And you're gonna call Tucker Carlson dumb? Look, as much as members of our audience might disagree with Tucker Carlson, I totally respect that. You can't call the guy dumb. He's not a dumb guy. And he is absolutely correct on the issue of Israel and Iran. But I'm curious what you think, Cenk.
Yeah, so it's now open warfare. Before, Tucker's saying some nice things, he still said something nice afterwards about Trump. We'll get to that in a minute. But Trump is saying that I said, I'm done with Tucker Carlson, I'm done with Megyn Kelly, he's done with Marjorie Taylor Greene, he's done with Tom Massey. But those are four of the most, I was gonna say true blue, but I guess true red, right? Conservatives, right wingers, MAGA, America first, there is. So Trump is putting in his lot with the neocons and with the establishment and with the donor class. Yeah. And so can he win that war? Well, Anna, so far the polling indicates that among people who still call themselves MAGA, he has huge support, okay? But among Trump voters who don't call themselves MAGA, and there might be more of them now not calling themselves MAGA, his support is down to 63%, which is unprecedentedly low for him with his own voters.
So I would differentiate the two different factions in the Republican base, not as MAGA or not MAGA. It's either America first or same old neocon traditional Republican slop, right? So the America First crowd is really upset, and that crowd significantly sides with Tucker Carlson. But one other thing that I've noticed in the polling, Cenk, as it pertains to Republican voters, is that prior to entering this war against Iran, a higher percentage of Republicans were against taking military action against Iran. But once Trump made the decision, a lot of them turned around and decided to fall in line. Now, what does that mean for the future of the Republican Party? I don't know, and I'm not even gonna attempt to predict it. But I think that someone like Tucker Carlson has managed to cobble together a bit of a coalition, the type of coalition that Trump succeeded at building in the lead up to the 2024 presidential election. And I say that as someone who has noticed, like just looking at his audience and the type of people who tend to watch his show, there's a pretty good mix there now. Whereas before it used to be just straight up right wingers, I'm noticing a lot of independents have flocked to his program, because these are the independents who voted for Trump because they didn't want to get dragged into forever wars, especially on behalf of Israel. And so it's really interesting to see. And I do think that this ongoing realignment is still happening to some extent. I don't know what it means for the Democratic Party, and I'm very curious to see how this all plays out for the next presidential election in 28.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure. So look, the terms are confusing because they used to all be united around the term MAGA. But now if you go online, there's tons of America First people going, MAGA's dead, we're done with MAGA. MAGA's just like the dead enders supporting Trump. And so there's a cleave there. And then the America First gets confused because sometimes Nick Fuentes uses it. And then you're like, wait, not that America First, right? And so I think that what it really breaks down to is establishment versus the populist. And when you look at it that way, within the Republican Party now and among the voters, that's not a contest. The populists are gonna win. We already had that. It was Trump versus Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis. How'd that turn out? I mean, it was.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It was a slaughter.
That's a good point.
Right?
And there's more. So on Monday, Trump hit back for the first time at both Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly, to your point earlier, Cenk, who had expressed concerns about Trump's decision to go to war with Iran. And so Trump said, of the two pundits, I think that MAGA is Trump. MAGA is not the other two. MAGA wants to see our country thrive and be safe. And MAGA loves what I'm doing, every aspect of it. This is a detour that we have to take in order to keep our country safe and keep our country safe, frankly. So I guess in the second part of that, he's referring to the United States and Israel. Again, it bears repeating, Iran did not pose any type of security issue for the United States. This is all about Israel. And Tucker Carlson has been repeatedly saying that, which I'm sure Trump is not a fan of. And then he continues to say, Trump, Megyn was opposed to me for years when I ran the first time and nothing stopped me. And so, some people are against and they always come back. She came all the way back, but now I guess she maybe doesn't like the idea of this war, but I do because I have to keep nuclear weapons out of the hands of the Iranians. Now, I gotta say, this is not a great time for the nuclear disarmament crowd, because we now have multiple case studies that show nuclear weapons tend to serve as a pretty good deterrent, okay? It could have been a deterrent when it comes to Russia invading Ukraine, but Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons at our behest in the 1990s. And then you look at Iran. Do you really think Iran would have been invaded by the United States? Would it be bombed by the United States and Israel, knowing that they have a nuclear arsenal? Probably not. Although the Israelis are a little crazy, so who knows? But as for Tucker, Trump insisted that his criticism doesn't bother him at all. Carlson can say whatever he wants. It has no impact on me. And after Trump's attack on Tucker today, Marjorie Taylor Greene came out in passionate defense of Carlson, saying that she supports Tucker. Trump doesn't even know what MAGA is anymore and turned it into MIGA, meaning make Israel great again. Trump is not America first, he's donor first. I know you love that, Cenk. Tucker would beat Trump if he ran for president, and Trump tried to violate the Constitution and tried to run again for the third time. Tucker himself wasn't willing to go nearly as far. In fact, he told reporter Oliver Darcy the following: "There are times I get annoyed with Trump, right now, definitely included, but I'll always love him no matter what he says about me." Tucker does this thing, I don't know if it's disingenuous or not. To me, it kind of comes across as disingenuous, where he'll like pretty viciously trash someone, but then he'll be like, "He's just the nicest guy. He's the nicest guy. He's a vicious warmonger and has committed war crimes and should probably be tried at The Hague. But he's the nicest guy I've ever met in my life. I've known him my whole life."
Yeah. No, I gotta admit, I don't believe Tucker when he says that. So look, it's okay. We agree on war in Israel and now donors and a bunch of things, and wonderful. We'll take it. Still plenty we disagree on, and yeah, no, I don't think he loves Donald Trump. I think he's just being political there, and fine, whatever. People are allowed to be political. But okay, so a bunch of clarifications that are important. So Anna said, this is a little side one, but MAGA. It means make Israel great again, and that's versus MAGA. But Trump once said, "Oh no, it means make Iran great again." And the mainstream media, Anna, I've now seen in articles, thinks that that's what it means. No, it doesn't mean that at all. God, they're so clueless. Anyway, small point. And another one that's a little tangential but important, and that statement that Anna read you about Trump saying, "Oh yeah, this war's for us. I mean, it's a little detour and it's for us and other countries." Wait, there's two huge admissions there. One, he said it's a detour. And detour by definition means not the road we were going on, not the path we were on, clearly, right? So, and then the second part is he says us and other countries. So he's admitting, yeah, this is definitely at a bare minimum also for other countries, meaning of course Israel. So Trump is not likely to say that, right? I mean, those are confessions for him, just because it's so true that even he can't help but say it. So we're asking on TYT.com, who do you think is sticking to the MAGA policies more, Donald Trump or Tucker Carlson? It's kind of funny to ask, left-leaning and independent, and now some right-wingers watching this too for sure. But I am curious what you guys think, because it isn't about whether you're right wing or not. It's about, hey, we all have eyes and ears. I remember, I'm old enough to remember a year ago when Trump was saying anti-war and America first, and he is most clearly not doing that.
I think a really important part of actually making America great again is trying to get back to a place, because I do think this existed at some point. I think I remember it. Getting back to a place where both sides can just be honest and then engage in good faith policy debates. You can't do that when one side or both sides are lying. So in this case, Trump is just trying to lie to us. How are you supposed to take that seriously? How are you supposed to make the country better and unite fellow Americans when one side and one leader is being like viciously dishonest about what the motivations for war with Iran happen to be? So that's the distinction that I draw. Because look, if a right winger who's in favor of the war with Iran comes to me and wants to get into a debate and is at least honest about what the motivating factors, the real drivers of this war happen to be, okay, great. I can have a conversation with you. We might get into a heated debate, there's no question. But I can't take people seriously when they lie to your face. And there are a lot of people in the Trump orbit who are very happy to lie in our faces.
Yeah, look, last thing on that is, as always, we're fair on both sides. And what really set me off yesterday was a whole bunch of the Democrats, a big chunk of the Democrats who were speaking out against the war. I can't believe we went into this war, this is outrageous. They're gonna go vote on it, they're gonna vote to fund it. Because such liars. And why are they lying? Because they literally, it's not hard to solve. They also get paid by the Israeli lobby, literally, completely. So all of this is a game, it's theater. That's why I get so mad at the media who keeps playing along with the play as if it's real world. It's not the real world. Trump is getting paid by the Israelis, so are a lot of Democrats. They're both lying. So that's why in this whole struggle, if you say to me, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson were largely being honest, even when certainly on the things we disagree with them on too, like they're not hiding any of their opinions. So there's like, they're very harsh on some of the things we disagree on. And then on the ones that we agree on, well, they've been more consistent. There's no question that they were anti-war and stayed anti-war. Trump has not been consistent. And and Trump, of course, when you're talking about liars, I mean, he's a legendary liar. So he's kind of ironically perfect for politics. And I say ironic because originally MAGA liked him because they thought he wasn't a politician and he was one of them. And that was probably the thing they were most wrong about.
Well, when we come back from the break, I want to give you all an update on how the ongoing and escalating war is going in the Middle East. So stick around for that and more.
Let's go to Super Chat. America 1776 USA. Thank you for the contribution on Super Chat. We appreciate it. By the way, notice this is the 250th anniversary of independence. We should do it again. We'll talk more about that as the year goes on. Timmy D says every position in Iran's government is elected. Yes, even the Ayatollah by a Supreme Council. It's not up to stupid Trump who becomes the Ayatollah. So that's literal, guys. So it doesn't mean that there's democracy in Iran. It means that they have small elections within themselves, the mullahs do. And then there are other rings of elections around that. So as they're voting, they're not gonna be like, oh, what does the guy who attacked us and killed all the people sitting in these seats earlier think? Let's just do what he wants. That's not a thing. He's just so detached from reality. It's maddening. Balkan Mountain writes in, yo, Cenk, I just wanted to say I love you. Right back at you, brother. I saw the Piers interview. These gaslighting dumbasses will do anything to justify dragging us into this war. F the propaganda industrial complex. Yeah, so I did an interview with Mario Nafal on, he's big on X these days, and did two different ones, both this week, because everybody's talking about the Iran war. And one was with Kornikas, that's the one that Anna called a terrorist that she was totally right about, 100% factual. And so I had a big shouting match with him. Then I did an interview with him just one-on-one with Mario. And guys, it's like such a relief to be able to have a normal human intelligent conversation, facts back and forth, without some Israeli thug jumping in and go, no, we're doing this to help the Iranians. I mean, we killed them all, but that's the way to help them, right? I mean,
yeah. Let me just say, people get on our asses because we yell, right? But do you guys understand that we're trying to be calm, but every time we go on Piers Morgan's show and we start talking, the pro-Israeli person inevitably interrupts again and again and again. So you have no choice but to speak over them. And it drives me insane. So if you don't want to hear me yell, get on their asses about how they keep interrupting.
100%. And so here's what's not gonna happen. They're not gonna talk over us. Okay.
No.
So the Israelis are used to bossing people around. Well, they came to the wrong place for that. Chess Viking 90 says, here, F Israel, off topic. But what do you guys think of Katie Porter for governor of California running on a populist message? Is she? I haven't heard anything from her. I don't know why she wouldn't want to come on a populist show to pitch her message. It's not about being bitter about her not coming on. I don't care. None of them have come on. And I don't know who I'm gonna vote for, but they haven't even made a case.
She defends money in politics, so.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
No.
Yeah, I'm totally open to who I'm gonna vote for, because none of them have made a case at all to our side, populist side, progressive side, whatever the side is. They're just such standard politicians, it's annoying. Anyway, YT Pernude said, this is just embitter Iran against American ideas, of course. With a gal, says, Cenk and Anna, in case you're unsure of your value, my hubby had a heart attack on Monday. Oh my God. As soon as he was stabilized, he wanted TYT to keep up with what's going on. He loves you too. Oh my God, I hope he gets well. That's amazing. right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, but also Sammy B. Tube and Montaigne for Hire. Thanks for joining, guys. We appreciate it. They hit the join button below on YouTube. Everybody, you can do it at tyt.com/join, and you get a couple of months off for annual membership. Melody Loves Music gifted a membership on YouTube, and Otaku Dragon gifted 5 American Heroes. We appreciate you guys. All right, you guys help us. We try to help you. If you're paying over $50 for your cell phone service, you're nuts. There's no need to do it. Nothing on your phone will change if you switch over to Noble Mobile, and it's on a T-Mobile service line, basically. I have perfectly good reception everywhere. Nothing on my phone has changed. Please save yourself some money. And 50 is the max you can pay. You usually pay in the 30s because they give you money back for data, plus 40 bucks off now if you sign from the first month if you sign up now. So tyt.com/switch. tyt.com/switch. Do it now because you're just gonna do it later and then say, why didn't I save all the money for the last 6 months? All right, Anna, what's next?
Well, we need to get into some of the updates on how the American people are feeling about this war that we've gotten ourselves into on behalf of a foreign country. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Stand up as a Marine and stand up for America. No one wants to fight for Israel.
Why are you here? Why are you getting arrested?
Free Palestine, from the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Palestine will be free.
Oh my God, they broke his arm. Oh man.
We just witnessed a Marine veteran interrupting the hearing, and they broke his arm.
Why did he interfere?
Because there is a war in Iran, and our military brothers and sisters are going to die for Israel, and we are here to say no.
Important to know that Iran is preparing for the US and Israel to carry out a ground invasion. Something tells me that it's going to be mostly American troops who risk their lives in this operation. And that's precisely why US Marine veteran Brian McGinnis was protesting the war in Iran and was forcibly removed from a Senate Armed Services Subcommittee hearing in the Capitol just yesterday as a result of his protests. Now, Cenk, the war is incredibly unpopular with the American people. Poll after poll has demonstrated that. And senators are literally breaking bones if our own veterans protest this war. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so we're gonna get to the numbers on how unpopular the war in Trump has become. But I just wanna say that man right there was a patriot. That's what patriots look like. And I've got a warning for the establishment. There's a lot more patriots to come, okay? There's going to be a political price to pay for not serving American voters. So I love McGinnis and I love what he did.
Absolutely. So Montana Senator Tim Sheehy, he actually assisted the Capitol officers in removing McGinnis. And as you can literally hear in the video, which we're not gonna play this part of it because it's horrific. You can hear McGinnis's arm snap, his bone break as they're forcibly removing him from the chamber. Now, McGinnis is the one who now faces multiple charges, including assaulting an officer. And if you look at the way legacy media has framed this whole incident, they're just making him seem like an unhinged, violent person who like physically assaulted people. The Capitol police officers were treated for their injuries, according to ABC News, but no reporting on what happened to homeboy's arm. Is he okay? And McGinnis, if you're unfamiliar with him, he's a 45-year-old Senate candidate who is running in the Green Party. But what really warmed my heart, Cenk, is the fact that people across the political spectrum have been defending McGinnis. And I'm talking about like far, hard right wingers who know that he's a Green Party candidate. And they're like, I don't care about his politics. Okay, he's a Marine veteran. He has served our country, and for him to be treated that way is unacceptable. And to people who are defending him across the political spectrum, despite political differences, I really love and respect you for sticking up for what's right here. Now, he was expressing what he was expressing in this protest was sheer disgust that the United States is engaging in a war against Iran that no one voted for, including, by the way, members of Congress. Now, unfortunately, today the War Powers Resolution resolution vote failed, it doesn't look like Congress has any interest in maintaining even a modicum of a check on the executive branch when it comes to war powers, because they don't want to be held responsible for voting in favor of wars that go sideways, kind of like what happened in Iraq and what's very likely going to happen in the Middle East now. So the war against Iran is not popular with the American people, and the Israelis know it. And so I want to take you to Isaac Herzog, the president of Israel, who in a sit-down interview with CBS News acknowledged how unpopular this is in America.
What do you think this war does to the US-Israeli relationship going forward? And I ask because it's not a popular war in America.
I understand it's not a popular war in America because, usually people do not know the intricacies of the war, and they also compare it to previous and other wars. This is a unique war. And I listened very carefully to Secretary Rubio's statements yesterday in Congress. It's a unique war, it's a focused war, it is a war that comes in a time where you can really bring real change in the Middle East for the future.
That last sentence was a giveaway. This is all about real change in the Middle East for the future. Now, what does that mean? Now, this war isn't actually all that unique when you think about it. I mean, it's more unique in that Iran is not a joke. I mean, it's a country of 92 million people. I think a lot of Americans have been misled into thinking that it's like some third world country, when in reality, it's a sophisticated society with incredibly intelligent people. And so, and they also don't know about the various political differences and factions among the public in Iran. They seem to think that, Persian Jews in Beverly Hills, California represent the entirety of the Iranian population, but that's just not the case. And so, yeah, it's unpopular. And the only thing that makes this war unique is that it's an instance of a country like the United States, a military superpower, getting dragged into a war on behalf of a tiny Middle Eastern country that we don't benefit from at all. So I guess it's unique in that way. But what do you think, Cenk?
Yeah, so first of all, it's trippy that the Green Party is now filled with veterans who are against war. Anthony Aguilar, a retired lieutenant colonel, who's a whistleblower on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Those are the people killing the Palestinians while they were getting food. He's also running in North Carolina in the Green Party. So, I mean, that is a hell of a turn. The political spectrum is so, it's gone. I don't know what's left, right, or middle anymore. It's fascinating times. Now, meanwhile, Sheehy, of course, is an Israeli goon. What I mean by that is he's pretty young to the Senate, new to the Senate, and he's already gotten $641,000 from AIPAC at a minimum. All the AIPAC tracker numbers are the bare minimum because they also get dark money and money into their super PACs that they can't track. So an Israeli goon comes in and breaks a US Marine's arm for protesting a war that Americans are going to die in for Israel. I mean, this is crazy. And so that's why they're so intensely unpopular. And Anna, you're right about that last sentence from the Israeli president. He's basically saying we're remaking the Middle East, and we know why they're remaking it. They want greater Israel, and they want every one of their neighbors to be defenseless. And now, interesting thing, one of the top businessmen and folks who have a lot of power in the UAE came out today saying, what did America do to us? Why are we in the middle of this war? Just because Israel wanted it? Now, UAE is like the top ally of Israel in the Gulf. And even their top folks are going, what's going on? Why are we getting hit for Israel's war? I think the UAE thought that Israel was on their side. Israel isn't on anybody's side. It's only on Israel's side. So they'll use the UAE for as long as it's convenient. They'll use America for as long as it's convenient. And again, in the interview I did earlier today with a guy who's actually based in the UAE, we're talking about how they're going into the Indian government now and agitating against Indian Muslims to rile up India to support America. That they're starting to jump from here to there because they think they need a new superpower to help drive this stuff. So in the Middle East, they're remaking it for themselves. We have no interest in remaking Iran. Iran was had no chance of reaching us with non-existent nukes that they didn't have and ballistic missiles that had absolutely, literally, physically no chance of reaching us. So this is Israel's war, and we're all being made to pay the price.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk about some of the new polling on public opinion within the United States in regard to this war. But I also want to talk just briefly about what the US and Israel seem to be targeting in Iran, what kind of buildings they're going after. And it looks like Iran has done some pretty significant damage when it comes to important, military equipment, including THAAD missile defense batteries. We kind of need that for the interceptors that we're running low on. But anyway, I'll give you that and more when we come back.
All right, let's go to Impeach for Peace, saying today's stock drop was courtesy of the Iranians closing the Strait of Hormuz. And analysts predicted that Trump's donors would force him to negotiate a peace if the markets dropped by more than 10%. The Iranians are like, you can kill our leaders, but we can kill your economy. I'd love to see Trump's ass handed to him in this way. If US corporations had to decide between Trump and their precious stock market, I can tell you which one they would choose. Yeah, of course. And so look, that's part of the realpolitik of the situation. Which is how long can America withstand a war? So, and that's the problem with having a moron president who didn't think any of this through, didn't plan it out, let Israel drag him into this war. And now, yeah, the stock market is finally crashing. The gas prices are sky high, and America is not going to have a high tolerance for that. We're going to show you the polling on it in a minute. CB1 says Trump is Trump first, last, and always. That is the most correct statement ever read on air. Yes. America first, Trump. No, Trump doesn't. The only reason why he's listening to Israel is because they've given him hundreds of millions of dollars, and I would be shocked if they didn't have blackmail on him. Shocked. That's why Netanyahu comes over personally, doesn't want to say it on the phone. He's come over 7, 8 times. Now remember Trump? Every time Trump starts to waver, Netanyahu comes in and slaps him around a little bit and goes, I'm gonna sit there and bleed all day. And he's going, oh, okay, I'll do anything you say, baby. So, and that's only still because he's looking out for himself. Dragon Slowly says, any politician who opposed genocide, war, pedophilia, sexual assault while fighting for populist economics would destroy their opponent regardless of party. Of course, by the way, first Rebellion PAC candidate has won. Richard Ojeda won the primary in North Carolina. So there's a guy who fits that description perfectly. He won the primary comfortably. Go support Ojeda in North Carolina 9. Teddy Lucy Linda says, I'm definitely not a fan of Tucker Carlson, but I support him speaking out since he's on the right side of things and because of the reach he has with the right. Maybe some of them will listen and actually process the information Tucker's putting out there. We can only hope. Yeah, they're definitely listening. And Tucker has started a rebellion over there, on the issues we care about, war and Israel. And I think he's done amazing work there. Yes, you're right that on other issues, we still don't agree. Sec 86379 says, after 10 years, Cenk still thinks Trump is a populist. On what universe? He's establishment on steroids. So
that's not what you said.
No, I know. That's why I wanted to read it and clarify it. Guys, I get that as we go quickly, sometimes you are not, there's a communication issue, right? I never, ever said that Trump was a populist. Not today, not a year ago, not 10 years ago, never, right? He's a fake populist, but he's trying to go in the populist lane, right? That's what I'm saying. So and in fact, one of the main arguments we made against Trump in this election was, guys, he's lying to you. He's a fake populist. He's actually one of them. He's the elites. He's the establishment. He wants all that stuff, and he's going to do exactly what they. In fact, brother, you should see this exchange I had with Stephen Miller in October of 2024. So that went a little viral online the other day because he was like, "Oh, we're against war, and you're for war with Kamala and Biden." I'm like, "All right," and I told him, "No, you're going to go to war exactly as Israel commands you," and like what happened was, sorry, but it's true, word for word, exactly what wound up happening with them. So like no one knows that they're fake populists more than we do. That's why we want the populists to come to the right side. We'll be back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Scotty Command 808. I tried. Thanks for joining. We appreciate it. Casper, what's next?
This is next.
What do you think this war does to the US-Israeli relationship going forward? And I ask because it's not a popular war in America.
I understand it's not a popular war in America because, usually people do not know the intricacies of the war, and they also compare it to previous and other wars. This is a unique war. And I listened very carefully to Secretary Rubio's statements yesterday in Congress. It's a unique war, it's a focused war, it is a war that comes in a time where you can really bring real change in the Middle East for the future.
Well, it turns out the American people are not buying it. You just heard from Israeli President Isaac Herzog. And Cenk, it turns out that more polling has come out, which indicates that this war against Iran is deeply unpopular with the American people. Your 2 cents?
Yeah, I want people to see how bad it's going in terms of this war with the polling. But I also want to talk about how bad the war is going in terms of the bombings, because they've now begun a genocide in Iran as well. So it's not a genocide yet, but they're doing the same exact tactics they use in Gaza. We'll talk about it in a minute.
Yes. Now, as for public opinion, The Guardian did something really interesting. They reached out to their readers and they asked their American readers in particular, what are your thoughts on the fact that we, are now at war with Iran? And they spoke to a lot of interesting people, including, Persian Americans, Iranian Americans. And I want to start off with 66-year-old Iraj Roshan, who's a retired cardiologist. He was born in Tehran, but he's been in the United States for many decades. He's a US citizen. And here's what he had to say. I don't have any love lost for the Ayatollahs, but these wars are won by narrative, which I thought was a really interesting point. He continues, I don't see any way this war is going to end in a way that the US can declare victory without putting boots on the ground or without arming the Iranians themselves. I hate to see that so many American kids are going to be eventually dragged into a war that we cannot win, at least by any definition that we could write down today. So he's being very real about the risks that are being taken, and he does not have a rosy outlook in regard to how this is all going to play out. Then you have another, Iranian 18-year-old Shahram Shamagam from Texas, who identifies as a Republican and in fact absolutely loathes the regime in Iran. He called them controlling and horrible. However, he did say this. The US is not doing much to minimize civilian casualties, and we have no real plan after we finish this operation. What will replace the government of Iran? And will we have boots on the ground? Is there any guarantee that this won't be our generation's Afghanistan or Iraq? And you know how we feel about that. You know how Cenk and I feel about that. Now, 41-year-old Meg, who's a small business owner in Brooklyn, told The Guardian, for a lot of my Muslim friends, this is their favorite time of year. So to have this renewed tragedy strike in the middle of that, and of course she's referring to Ramadan. As someone on the outskirts who cares about people in my community and in my circle of friends, it breaks my heart. You have 74-year-old Barb, a retired mental health counselor based in North Carolina, who told The Guardian, we can be sure that Trump has launched this war for selfish purposes, whether to flaunt his power to control the headlines away from Epstein or to entertain himself. This needless war is not for the benefit of the Iranian people, nor is it to the benefit of the American people. So let's be clear about that as well. But outside of these individual, testimonies and anecdotes, the broader public opinion also shows that this war is not being handled well by the Trump administration. At least that's what the majority of Americans think. Now, let's go to the CNN poll, which found that about 60% of Americans disapproved of the attacks, according to a CNN poll conducted immediately after the strikes. Two other polls by Reuters and Ipsos and the Washington Post had similar results. For instance, a majority of Americans, 56%, said that President Trump was too willing to use military force to advance US interests. That was in the Reuters Ipsos poll. Then you look at a new Fox News poll, and that also had some pretty interesting results. Currently, 43% approve and 57% disapprove of the job Trump is doing as president overall. But then you take a look at, some of the specific issues. So another 6 in 10 say he is focused on the wrong things. By comparison, 54% said Biden had the wrong focus in November of 2021. So at the same point in, Biden's presidency. And then when you look at Trump's ratings, they're underwater by 35 points on the cost of living, 32% approve, 67% disapprove. He's underwater 27 points on tariffs, 23 points on the economy and healthcare, 20 points when it comes to foreign policy. He's underwater 19 points on taxes, 13 points on jobs, and 6 points on immigration. Back to you, Cenk.
Yeah, so I want to give you guys context. When we started the Iraq war, was it popular or unpopular? It was actually very popular. Why? Because the American people were lied to. They were told that there was weapons of mass destruction. And this is a really important one. They were told that Iraq attacked us on 9/11. And that's just not true at all, not even 1% true. In fact, they would attack Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda was also opposed to Iraq. And 69% of Americans believed that Saddam had personally attacked us on 9/11. They were lied into war in that way. So hence, when we started the war, it was at a 72% approval. This war, when it starts, is already at a 60% disapproval. So that is all the difference in the world. Iraq got super unpopular through a series of debacles and disasters through many years. This one starts out deeply unpopular. And guys, when we start a war, even if most people were against it, like there was 2 different polls before the war started. One had it at 70% of Americans opposed. Another one had it at 85% of Americans opposed. But once the war starts, you usually rally around the flag and you get a little bit more popular. The war gets a little bit more popular. In this case, barely moved, still 60% unpopular. So America hates this war, doesn't want it at all. And neither does Iran, obviously, based on what Anna read you, and let alone what you're about to hear next. And no, there's only one country in the world that wants this war, and that's Israel.
Now, the thing that's really concerning, Cenk, is the fact that Trump seems to be under this delusion that the majority of Americans actually love that we're at war with Iran. So Politico spoke to Trump, and I just want to give you an excerpt from their piece where they say that Donald Trump has brushed off concerns over any backlash sparked by the US-Israeli military operation against Iran, saying the public is loving it. In an interview with Politico, the US president said, quote, "People are loving what's happening. We're taking out a threat to the United States of America, major threat, and doing it like nobody's ever seen before." Now, most Americans don't buy that excuse for military intervention against Iran. Most people know that this is being fought on behalf of Israel. But to your point, Cenk, why don't we take a quick look at some of the issues that have already come up when it comes to the US-Israeli attacks on Iran in particular, because it turns out that the civilian casualties are really starting to increase significantly. The total number of reported civilian deaths stands at 1,114, including 181 children. The New York Times published their investigation into the elementary school, the all-girls school in Manab that was part of the opening strikes against Iran. And it turns out that their investigation found that the United States did carry out those strikes, which is incredibly devastating. You have an incident, like the death toll in that strike keeps changing, but there's evidence that a double tap happened. double strike, and that as many as 160 little girls were killed as a result of these strikes against the school. Anyway, now there's more, because there's a new report in the UK publication known as The Telegraph, and the title of the piece, if you want to read it for yourselves, is "Tehran: An Apocalypse of Hospitals in Flames and Children Buried Beneath the Rubble." Certainly sounds a lot like Gaza, doesn't it? The report indicates that Kamran, a Tehran resident, told The Telegraph that the United States and Israel have been bombing endlessly with no care about where or what they're striking. He says, quote, "They are striking buildings where families live. After each explosion, people rush to help, and then another bomb hits the same area." And again, it bears repeating, these double tap strikes were carried out against the girls' school in Manab. The girls' school in Iran, where 165 people were killed by an apparent US-Israeli attack, was hit with 2 strikes, with the second missile killing sheltering survivors, 2 first responders, and the parent of a slain child have told Middle East Eye. And according to Kamran, going back to his statements, remember, he's the guy who lives in Tehran. He says many people are trapped under the rubble. Hospitals are filled with injured patients, and staff are overwhelmed. They are even striking hospitals where the wounded are being treated. And hospitals certainly are being struck. A hospital in the southern Bushehr area have been destroyed. Then you also have the emergency workers who have been seen evacuating newborn babies from that hospital, which suffered the terrible strike, trying to get those newborn babies out into safety. The Gandhi Hospital in Tehran and multiple other medical facilities across the country were also struck by the Israelis and the US. Ashkan, another Tehran resident told the Telegraph, quote, "An apocalypse is unfolding here. Today has been the worst day. Those who had cars fled. Those of us without cars are left here under the bombs." So the bodies are piling up, and it's absolutely devastating, Cenk. And what also should be reported, but isn't really reported in US media, unfortunately, is the fact that the Iranians have actually carried out some strikes on important military installations and military capabilities that we have in the region. So for instance, to be fair, CNN did do this investigation. They found that Iran has destroyed a key US radar system supporting a THAAD missile defense battery at our base in Jordan, more than 500 miles away from Iran. The radar, a critical component used to detect and track ballistic missiles for interception, appears to have been completely destroyed during the early days of this war. That's not a good sign for the United States, certainly, and it's not a good sign as the United States runs low on these, interceptor missiles.
Yeah, so let me add a couple of things to that. A refugee crisis has begun. A lot of Iranians starting to move to Turkey, and from there they'll probably move into Europe. So Israel driving yet more mass refugee and immigration crises towards the West. Number 2, we're trying to make a deal with the Kurds to have them do a disastrous, basically incursion from Iraq into Iran, and they'd get slaughtered. But they're trying to foment a civil war. They were waiting for the green light from the Americans. Marco Rubio said, "We haven't armed them, but I can't speak for the Israelis." So that means the Israelis have armed the Kurds, which, by the way, then leads to another problem. The Turks are not going to be happy at all about the Kurds being armed very near their border. So they're going to be even more irate about this, and pushes them closer to Iran on it. So now, guys, this entire epic disaster, especially on the Iranian people, brought to you by the same Israelis who told you we have to attack Iran because they care so much about the Iranian people. The protesters were killed, and the Israeli hearts broke over it. So they had to go in there and kill them more.
So I want to address that real quick, because I think that there are a lot of well-meaning people who even watch our show. In fact, I got a lengthy email from one of our viewers, a longtime viewer of TYT, who seems to think that we are defending the regime in Iran. That is not the case. I am against US and certainly Israel's involvement in what's going on because they don't care about brutalizing the Iranian people. In fact, in Tehran, they have been brutalized from the very beginning of this war. I mean, the opening strikes killed hundreds of little girls in an elementary school. So do you guys understand where I'm coming from? I'm not rejecting this war because I don't care about the Iranian people and I want them to suffer under a regime they don't like. I think that the situation will be far worse with US and Israeli involvement because as we've heard Pete Hegseth say now in multiple press conferences, there are no brakes on the car. They don't believe in war crimes. They don't believe in being held back by international law, meaning they don't care about killing civilians. How is that liberating the Iranian people? Please explain that to me. That is not some, default support for the Iranian regime. I just know better. As an Armenian, okay, Armenian American, I was born and raised in the United States, but nonetheless, I care about Armenia. I would rather put a gun to my head than encourage the US military to do an invasion into Armenia for any reason, because I know it's not gonna end well. So I just don't get it. I don't get how people don't understand this. I don't get how people can see what Israel has carried out in Gaza and think that the Israelis would care to protect Iranian civilians. And so far, all we've seen is civilians getting battered and killed.
Yeah, so look, I know people are so frustrated with the regime in the Iranian diaspora that they think anything to change it, anything. And I want to go back, I want to be with my family, or I want to be able to visit, and I'm going to trust the Israelis. Oh no, never trust the Israelis. Are you crazy? I mean, just because you want regime change doesn't mean that any way to do it makes sense. Okay, what if North Korea said, all right, great, your wish is our command. We're gonna do regime change in Iran and we're gonna start by nuking them. Well, how would that help? Like, I guess what you're saying is, well, obviously Israel is not North Korea. They have our best interests. Oh my God, you think they have your best interests in mind? No, they don't. So that which brings us to today. So what's happening, as Anna told you, here we go again. They're bombing schools, hospitals, apartment buildings. So I was debating this on Piers Morgan yesterday, and Matt Schlap, the head of the, one of the largest conservative conferences, about the 165 girls killed in the elementary school. He said, well, if they'd grown up, they were gonna wear burqas anyway.
Yeah, he's a disgusting, despicable excuse for a human being, honestly. Like, these people disgust me, absolutely disgust me. And it's pure evil. Like, these are the people who are gonna liberate the Iranians. They don't even see the Iranians as human beings. They think that they're all like religious extremists, worthy of slaughter, including little girls. Yeah. So I apologize to people who are offended that I don't want US and Israeli involvement or intervention in Iran. And it's not because I don't care about the Iranian people. It's actually the exact opposite of that. I don't want them to be slaughtered.
Yeah, beware of Israelis bearing gifts. They're usually bombs, okay? So, and by the way, as Anna pointed out, the double taps have begun. So why do you do a double tap? So that you murder the rescuers that came in to find the wounded and save their lives. Only the most evil people do that. And that's inarguable. A double tap is incredibly evil. It's to kill the ambulance drivers, the medics, the doctors that show up. So this is to help the Iranian people. We told you. I mean, God, I wish we could help the Iranian people in some other way. But if you're looking for the Israelis to help you, well, listen to Bezalel Smotrich, now one of the most important people in the Israeli cabinet. He said, we're gonna turn Iran into Khan Yunis. That's in Gaza. So they basically saying we're gonna level them. Oh,
he
sorry,
said that
Lebanon.
about Lebanon.
Yeah.
But I mean, the point remains. I mean, they're not just focusing on leveling Tehran. They're gonna do the same to Lebanon, and they're saying it out loud. And by the way, at this point, I think it's pretty obvious when the Israelis tell you they're gonna do something, you should believe them because they do it.
Yeah, especially when they tell you that they're gonna do something terrible. And finally, so just saw a little earlier, huge rallies in Iran. Guess for who? for the regime. Why? Because they're burying 165 girls and everybody sees the graves 24/7 and burying the kids there. So now, as expected by rational human beings, they have rallied around the flag. And now they hate America and they hate Israel even more. And they're gonna resist changing the regime with everything they've got. So it had the exact opposite effect, just like we told you.
Well, the war is already having an impact on our economy. And when we come back from the break, I'll show you how.
Every day, the Young Turks delivers 2 hours of solid, fact-based, timely news and progressive commentary on all the day's most important stories. We keep our viewers informed while also providing perspective and insight on the news we cover, so you understand not only what's happening, but also what's happening behind the scenes, the stories behind the stories.
We play musical chairs and put these children in one awful detention facility to the next. That's what's happening at the border.
The things that got him banned, he's still spreading. So presumably, I think it's reasonable to say that if you allow him back on the website, he's going to do it again.
Any legal voter that we deem not willing to vote for my side shouldn't vote because it'll replace me that's supposed to vote for my side. That's not how voting works. That's not how democracy works.
And while many people following today's political news can get discouraged about the direction of the nation and the world, that's not us. At TYT, we're genuinely optimistic about the future, and with good reason. Today, wide majorities of Americans agree with our progressive stances on issues ranging from healthcare and education to climate, immigration, and wages. The rising generation of young people are also overwhelmingly progressive in their political beliefs and policy objectives, and they're increasingly flexing their muscle as voters and activists to demand change from our elected officials. The traditional mainstream media is mostly AWOL. They, along with the government and many other cherished institutions, have been captured by corporate interests. Audiences sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether broadcasting cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. The antidote is the Young Turks. Unlike mainstream corporate outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma, and we don't carry water for the Republican or Democratic parties. So watch us Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, and join the thousands of progressives around the globe who tune in every day for TYT's unmatched, award-winning content and see what it's like to experience a news organization that only answers to you.
Cenk Uygur is not here today, which means that I will be able to talk during the show. No,
We'll see. Poor
Cenk, under the bus.
My God, if Jesus came back, how much would the Republicans hate him? So now you have to give away all of your possessions to the poor. Steve King would be like, oh, Weezy. Everyone should be lucky enough to have a John Iadarola in their life.
You confused everyone?
Okay, sorry, I thought it was pretty clear.
Take a break now.
You can turn me to Dr. Manhattan as long as I get what Dr. Manhattan's packing, okay?
The liberal mom says, Mark Thompson, have you ever thought about doing one of those tapes that soothe people to sleep? Like Mark Thompson reads the phone book. I'd buy it.
If you'll buy it, I'll do it.
Emilio D'Amelio writes in, John, you are so thick. I love you. That's what he wrote.
Pork Chop Express writes in and says John Iadarola needs a new jacket.
Whoa.
Those 24-inch pythons are about to burst out of his sleeve.
Gun, baby. You know, the two people here said that their moms were both in love with you over Beauty and the Beast.
Mm-hmm. That's an improvement. I usually get grandmothers.
The other day, I broke a mic just by being too loud.
Just by talking.
Just by talking.
Chemical castration when we return from the break.
I hope that, who they choose for the White House isn't just a borderline Klansman. That's all we gotta hope.
Buy a Ferrari?
Yes, I'm getting to that.
Why wouldn't I want to be on a show with you guys?
You obviously have very scrupulous and discerning listeners in your audience.
Did Anna comment on my tan yet? No, she hasn't.
You're a good bosser.
But Anna did say that I come in here today with a fresh mind. That's all I'm about. I'm about a fresh mind.
I can't with you right now. Okay?
She just can't. She can't, but nonetheless, we have to for another 3 hours. I'm back, baby. Let's rip in the Republicans. See, don't miss the live show.
That's great.
Tell people, if you're a member, you get the whole live show whenever you want, because this stuff doesn't go into any of the clips.
Cenk Uygur has the morality of a cockroach.
Oh, what a big man you are. Let me buy you a pack of gum. I'll show you how to chew it.
back on TYT. Cenk, Anna, and Kevin Romero. Kevin, great to have you, brother. Appreciate it. All right, Anna, what's next?
We got to talk about the economy, especially now that we have been dragged into a war in the Middle East again.
I'm a truck driver, and on Monday I fueled diesel, and today I fueled again. I paid 67 cents a gallon more in diesel. I have, 300 gallons I put in, so that's a lot of money. I mean, Americans we're struggling here. We need help. We're supposed to be America first. That's why we voted President Trump in. I voted for him every time, and I voted him because he was America first and got rid of the illegals. And it's not happening. This war is going to be costing us, and we're all going to start paying more for everything.
Maybe the illegals weren't really the heart of the problems that we're dealing with here in the United States. But nonetheless, that was a 3-time Trump voter who clearly is not happy with the president now that we are at war yet again in the Middle East, which might explain why the White House is now scrambling to course correct before the economy goes kaput. But I don't think we're dealing with people who are competent enough to maybe pump the brakes and reverse the damage. I could be wrong. Cenk, your 2 cents.
So the market started to crash today. The Dow lost 800 points. So Pam Bondi's going to be heartbroken. So this is a double whammy. Not only is the war going disastrously, but now it will also cause the economy to go disastrously. And Anna, after you give us all your facts, I have a new breaking news story that also affects this.
Oh, goody. I love it. Okay, so Sean Hannity, who has been cheerleading war with Iran, suddenly finds himself apologizing to his callers. Why? Well, because the war has already translated to higher prices at the gas pump. Take a look.
President Trump has stopped nuclear weapons from being in the hands of an absolute madman. And that was not just the biggest thing, it was absolutely essential. He had to open the Straits of Hormuz, or the world oil shortage would have been devastating for everybody. We're already up again over $4 a gallon, by the way, in diesel and gasoline, or at least diesel. Gasoline, I think, is still staying under around.
By the way, I'm very sorry about that, because that means less money in your pocket, and that makes your job harder. The only thing I can say that maybe will give you hope, I think this will be temporary. That's my guess.
It always is with President Trump. He always knows the right path back to prosperity for us.
Hannity, your guess is garbage. And the reason why I say that is because you're not an idiot and you know what's going on in the Middle East. Iran has struck some of the oil infrastructure in the Middle East, which is going to be disastrous. And not just the oil infrastructure, also gas infrastructure. So Qatar's, LNG production was targeted. And now it's offline indefinitely. So that's gonna hurt. We don't even know when they're gonna be online again. The Saudi oil fields were targeted. It was blamed on Iran. Iran has taken responsibility for some of the strikes that have been carried out. They didn't take responsibility for that strike, which makes me think it might have been a false flag carried out by the Israelis. But nonetheless, the point remains. The oil fields are being targeted. Oil infrastructure, gas infrastructure is being destroyed. Yeah, that's gonna cause prices to go up at the pump. And that has hey, you know what? This is an actual trickle down effect. Because if the price of oil and gas goes up, that translates into higher prices for everything. But Cenk, there's a Fox News poll that shows that in the past week, the average price of gasoline has jumped more than 25 cents to $3.25 a gallon, which would be quite a bargain in California. But in the rest of the country, that is a higher price, of course. That's 13 cents higher than on former President Joe Biden's last day in office. And Americans were really concerned about the cost of living before we went to war against Iran. So those concerns, of course, haven't been addressed and aren't going away anytime soon. Only 22% of voters say inflation is completely or mostly under control. 57% rate their personal finances negatively. Half of voters Reuters identify the cost of living as the most important economic issue facing the country, far ahead of government spending at 18%. I wish that number was a little higher though, because our debt is insane. Jobs at 10%, income inequality at 9%, tariffs at 8%, and taxes at 4%. And Politico spoke to several anonymous energy industry executives with knowledge of the Trump administration strategy or lack thereof. And the White House is apparently looking under every rock for ideas on improving energy prices, especially gasoline prices, said one of the executives. How about we don't go to war in the Middle East and risk, either destroying or damaging oil and gas infrastructure in oil and gas producing countries in the Middle East. This isn't difficult. Energy Secretary Chris Wright and other advisors focused on energy policy, including a council led by Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, are getting screamed at to find some good news on bringing down prices. The same executive said. And shockingly, Politico reports that the Trump administration had no plan at all for how to keep energy prices low when they launched this war. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and other hawkish members of the administration were leading the administration's planning, but other administration officials who would normally argue to keep oil prices low had initially been told to take a back seat. And per one of the other energy executives, the faction of the White House that would care about $80 to $90 oil per barrel, of course, was being silenced. There were louder voices winning at the moment. So that's what we're dealing with, Cenk. I mean, this is not an administration that seems to care about planning ahead. And not only are we getting dragged into a war we shouldn't be involved in at all, there's a price that we're gonna pay, both when it comes to potentially losing more soldiers, but also when it comes to bankrolling this war and the impact it's going to have on gas prices. So we're already starting to see the beginning phases of all of that.
So I'm gonna get to the breaking news in a sec, but first, gas prices 13 cents higher than under Biden. It's an epic disaster. So he used to, gas prices are too high. Gas prices, well, I'm not gonna go into any wars. So I'm America first. Now he's violated all of his promises, and the economic ones are the most important ones. Why? So when people go to vote, there's two things they care most about. The two things you should look at most. One is which way are independents leaning? The other is what do people feel about the economy? So those are your two most important indicators of who's gonna win an election. So for example, right now, if you looked at the approval ratings of the Democrats in Congress and the Republicans in Congress, the Democrats are still lower in approval rating than the Republicans. So you think so it didn't affect the Republicans. No, that's not right. The reason why the Democrats' number is lower is because there's a ton of internal dissatisfaction within the Democratic Party. They don't like their own leaders, and they are very right? So they're disgruntled with their own party, but when you go to see who are people going to vote for, independents are leaning massively to Democrats just to get away from the Republicans. Not because the Democrats have done a great job of bringing them in, but also as you just saw from Anna's numbers, the economic numbers are terrible. Those are the kind of economic numbers that I thought would near guarantee a loss for Joe Biden. And so that turned out to be, right. It was in a lot of ways, right? And now Trump is in the same exact kind of trouble. In fact, a little worse. So then that leads me to the news story that I just saw. The Gulf countries, here, let me read you the headline from Financial Times, and they have an exclusive on this. Gulf states could review overseas investments to ease financial strains caused by Iran war. So there's a hidden meaning in there. So what they're saying is, look, we now have all these costs. We've got apartment buildings being bombed, and this is because of America and Israel. And as I told you earlier in the show, I was on a show that was based in the UAE this morning. And they interrupted for breaking news of one of the top billionaires in the UAE going basically, I thought we were gonna be protected. That's why we did the deal with Israel and America. Now it turns out, no, we're in greater danger. So what was the point? And why did America choose to go into this war knowing allies like us would get deeply hurt? So now when those very wealthy Gulf countries take away their overseas investments, what of course they're referring to as Israel and America, well, that's gonna hurt our economy too. But the hidden meaning is overseas investments in the Trump family.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, finally a silver lining.
Yeah.
Give it to me, Cenk. Give me more. Give me more.
So the Gulf countries were told by Israel and America, especially UAE and Saudi Arabia, don't worry, sign the Abraham Accords and we'll put our bases there and because of us, you'll be perfectly protected. And now they find out that it was all a lie. Now, of course, we could have told them it was a lie from day one. It's stunning how little some world leaders know, right? And they feel super burned right now. And remember, of course, there's the $400 million plan that was given to Donald Trump. The Saudis gave $2 billion to Jared Kushner to invest. And then there was a talk of a new deal with the Trump team. Not talk, there was a new deal with the Trump team and they were gonna get a couple more $1 billion from that. Now, if all of that starts to go away, then Donald Trump's gonna be in a cold sweat panic. So that is a very interesting threat, but also goes to show you those countries are super pissed at us for starting this totally unnecessary war that has hurt their countries and their interests. So now even our allies are looking at hurting our interests, which is only gonna make the economy worse. So Anna, I'll give you a second silver lining here. As those countries begin to put pressure on Trump, and we start to run out of interceptor missiles, at some point we're gonna have to withdraw our ships from the Gulf. Otherwise, without interceptor missiles, they'll be sitting ducks. So what if Trump in a couple of weeks goes, well, I said 4 weeks, and this thing's turning into a disaster, gas prices are sky high, my beloved stock market has crashed, and now the sheiks won't even bribe me anymore. All right, Israel, we gotta go. And then Israel.
That'd be great. He should do that now. He should do that right now. In fact, it would have been like, there's actually a pretty clear exit ramp right now where he could theoretically, even though we know the truth, but for people who aren't paying close attention, I think they'd fall for it. He could claim victory. I took out the Ayatollah, obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities. We're done here. Bye-bye, but yeah.
You remember I said that in like the second day of the war. I was like, we already killed Ayatollah. We already destroyed their nuclear facilities. Yep. Mission accomplished. Let's get it. At that point, no American had died, right? So now we got 6 dead. And guess what? Now Republican senators are beginning to say the same thing we were saying. They're like, wait, are you sure the mission isn't accomplished? I mean, they'll get upbraided by their Israeli handlers. But so the only reason we're in here is because Donald Trump feels some sort of loyalty for certain reasons to the Israelis.
I don't think it's loyalty. That man isn't loyal to anything other than himself. I think for Trump, there's something going on. And I don't know what Netanyahu is hanging over his head, but he tends to get more and more extreme in favor of Israel's cause after Netanyahu visits. So do with that information what you will.
Yeah, real quick, last thing on that. So look, Trump loves money. The Israelis gave him the most amount of money in these elections. The Adelson family did, et cetera. But the UAE and all these other Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, et cetera, were giving him even more money. So now they're threatening that. But I think I'm just gonna say it, I've been saying it, I think it's blackmail. Because if he wants more money, he would definitely go with the Gulf. And now the Gulf countries have turned against Israel in this reporting. So if it's money, he'll definitely leave, right? But it seems like he didn't want to do this war in the first place. He called it a detour. He said it is for other countries. So I think they've got something on him. But if he does leave, like it's gotten bad enough and he's thinking I'm cooked anyway, and he withdraws our troops and withdraws from the war and leaves Israel by himself, then we'll definitely find out if we were right or wrong, because at that point, Netanyahu will definitely release whatever information he had on Trump, if he had any.
Right. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about some staffing changes over at DHS, and then hopefully we'll have a little bit of time left later in the show to discuss how angry Ben Shapiro is at Piers Morgan's platforming decisions. We'll be right back.
You knew damn well I was a snake before you took me in.
All right, right, back on TYT. Don't forget Noble Mobile. Make sure you switch over. TYT.com/switch. Do it now so you don't regret how much money you lost in the meanwhile. Okay, it's gonna take you less than 10 minutes. How many times I gotta say nothing's gonna change on your phone? So just ask around to other folks who've done it. So there's everybody's saving money. TYT.com/switch. Okay, Otaku Dragon wrote in a couple times. These are YouTube members now. Cenk needs to open up with "Down goes Chris." Well, hold on, we're doing that next. Wall of Gratitude says, "I've got a high energy today, so watching it real time for a change. I love it. I love when you guys watch live." The Raging Atheist says, "What's the point of having the Geneva Conventions if no one's going to hold countries guilty of war crimes accountable? Where are all the adults?" Well, really, Israel has almost single-handedly destroyed the Geneva Conventions and international laws about war crimes. It's the deepest irony there is. And the Israelis can't even argue with that one. They'll tell you, well, we hate international law. International law is stupid. It's for other people, inferior people. Israel's above the law. We'll never follow it, right? International Criminal Court, hate it. UN, hate it. NATO, hate it. War crimes, love it. Laws against war crimes, hate it, right? So yeah, and they're dragging America along. We created this system of international law, and now the Israelis are forcing us to destroy it. It's disgusting. The face Scott Smith says, "Gas in my town has gone up 50 cents a gallon in the past 3 days. I personally cannot afford this war." You're not alone, Faye, and a lot of people are getting pissed about it. American Viking 73 says, Nick Fuentes has even posted that he's off the Trump train. MAGA is just crumbling now. Yeah, Fuentes now says, stay home, don't vote for Republicans. They betrayed you, they said anti-war, they said America first, and they're obviously not doing that. Now, we don't agree with anything Fuentes says otherwise, but he is, for his followers, getting them to make sure that they stay home. And there's logic to that particular equation, which is, if your politicians betray you, you'd be nuts to vote for them again. Democrats seem to have finally, maybe, I hope, gotten that message after us saying it for 25 years in a row. Why are you rewarding your politicians for constantly betraying you? Anyway, Rusty Jones 59 says, Smocher said that Beirut is going to become the new Khan Yunis. We talked about that. And he says, not sure that was one of the objectives on the list. It wasn't for us, but it was for Israel all along. They had planned to invade Lebanon from day one when the war started. That's why they're ready to go right now. They're saying clear out 200,000 to 300,000 people from southern Lebanon because they're going to come in and take it all. Oh, look at that, they'll have more land, but while doing self-defense. Craig OH 1981 says, Cenk and Anna, I really want to thank you both deeply for doing what you're doing, always keeping it real, and I don't mind when you guys start yelling. It shows that you're passionate about speaking the truth. Thank you, Craig. With a gal says, for all interested, she wrote in about her husband who had the heart attack but then wanted to watch TYT as soon as he was awake. Hubby's back home and doing well. All right, we love to hear that. All right, again, wish him well. Passive Watcher 101 says, if anyone walks into Anna yelling at me through my TV screen, don't rescue me. I'm exactly where I want to be.
Yeah, some people are into that, you know?
Yeah, well, okay, I got one more for you when we come back. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Juju Beans just joined and wrote in, all right, I'm in. You and Breaking Points are my news shows, or my news now. All right, I love it. And Breaking Point's a great show. So, and then I'm gonna read one YouTube member, Mr. Anderson wrote in, if Anna were president, she'd be Abraham Lincoln.
That's hilarious.
That's an old one from Wayne's World, actually, but good one. Okay, Anna.
All right, we got to talk a little bit about what's happening with DHS. Really big news out of the leadership situation there. Let's get into it.
I'm saying, Ms. Gnome, that time after time after time I've been disappointed. Quality matters, not quantity, quality. And what we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Gnome, a disaster.
Have you had sexual relations with Corey Lewandowski?
Mr. Chairman, I am shocked that we're going down and peddling tabloid garbage in this committee today.
The president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir.
Inject that compilation into my veins. That was amazing. And now President Donald Trump has announced that Kristi Gnome is officially out as the Secretary of Homeland Security. So it seems as though her ouster was clinched by the disastrous hearings on the Hill yesterday, where she faced unusually difficult questions, including from members of her own party, Republicans. So before we reveal who the next DHS secretary will be, Cenk, your 2 cents.
Down goes Kristi Gnome. Down goes Kristi Gnome. Down goes Kristi Gnome. One of the worst members of this administration. There's breaking news on why Trump specifically fired her or moved her, and we'll tell you where they moved her to.
Now, he made the announcement on Truth Social saying, I am pleased to announce that the highly respected United States Senator from the great state of Oklahoma, Markwayne Mullen, will become the United States Secretary of Homeland Security effective March 31st, 2026. The current secretary, Kristi Gnome, who has served us well and has had numerous and spectacular results, especially on the border, will be moving to be special envoy for the Shield of the Americas, our new security initiative in the Western Hemisphere we are announcing on Saturday in Doral, Florida. I thank Kristi for her service at Homeland. Now, this makes Kristi Gnome the first cabinet secretary to leave during Trump's second term. Although there was the other guy,
Walz.
I'm forgetting his name.
Mike Walz.
Mike Walz, there we go. Mike Waltz, yes,
Waltz.
That's the guy.
Yeah.
Yes, now what led to this? Well, it was just earlier today that Punchbowl News reported that President Donald Trump has quietly asked Hill Republicans if he should fire Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Gnome, the latest sign of her tenuous standing inside the West Wing, according to multiple Republicans who have spoken with the president. And those calls to GOP senators came after Gnome faced some pretty hard questions from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle about her decisions as DHS secretary. And as you can imagine, there's been a lot of controversy when it comes to DHS. You have 2 American citizens who were shot and killed by ICE and Border Patrol. The immediate reaction from DHS was to label these individuals as terrorists, which was ridiculous. But the exchange that apparently ticked Trump off the most was with Senator John Kennedy, of all people. He pressed Gnome about a government-funded ad campaign that urged anyone in the US illegally to leave the country voluntarily. So the $220 million contract for the ad campaign was awarded to an LLC, which subcontracted with a company run by the husband of former DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin. The ads were filmed in October at Mount Rushmore. Ben Yoho, McLaughlin's husband, said he made $226,137.17 for his work. Now, here's part of the ads in question.
Why do I love these wide open spaces? They remind me of why our forefathers came here, not just for its beauty, but for the freedom only America provides. I'm Kristi Gnome. Anyone who searches for freedom can always find a home here, but that freedom's a precious thing, and we defend it vigorously. You cross the border illegally, we'll find you. But if you come here the right way, your American dream can be as big as these endless skies.
So Senator Kennedy argued that the campaign seemed more like a personal branding project than a worthwhile use of taxpayer money. But Gnome disagreed and insisted to Kennedy that Trump had signed off on all of it. Take a look at the exchange.
And you're saying that you're testifying that President Trump approved this ahead of time. Is that my understanding?
We had conversations about making sure that we were telling people.
No, ma'am. I'm asking you, sorry to interrupt, but the president approved ahead of time you spending $220 million running TV ads across the country in which you are featured prominently.
Yes, sir. We went through the legal processes, did it correctly.
Did the president know
worked
you
with
were going to do
OMB.
this?
Yes.
He did?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
And one thing, Senator, I think would be helpful to know is how effective that communications has been. That
well, they were
overwhelmingly
effective in your name recognition. I mean, to me, it puts the president in a terribly awkward spot. And I'm not saying you're not telling the truth. It's just hard for me to believe.
Well, it turns out it would have been okay for him to accuse her of being dishonest, because it turns out that a White House official disputed Gnome's claims, telling NBC News POTUS did not sign off on a $220 million ad campaign. Absolutely not. And then the president weighed in himself, saying, I never knew anything about it. Now, look, there had been, again, a lot of controversy surrounding DHS, the decisions made under Kristi Gnome. It seemed like she was more interested in playing dress up and engaging in cosplay as opposed to, being effective and legal in how she carries out her job. But she did end up thanking the president, and it seems like she's trying to stay on his good side. But in regard to Markwayne Mullen, Cenk, I love this tweet or this X post by Caitlin Collins from CNN. She says, Trump loves watching Mullen on TV and often praises him, which was a factor in his decision.
Of course. Of course. God, he's such a vain child. They did
which is ironic.
Yeah.
Given his appearance, but yeah.
Yeah, remember that ad they ran against John Edwards a million years ago? He's so vain when he was combing his hair before interference. I mean, Trump's even beats him. All right, so most of the tough questioning was actually from Republicans, which is interesting. And so that senator that we just showed you is Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana, Foghorn Leghorn. And he's a really bright guy, and if he's cross-examining you, you might be in trouble. That's why I'm always amused when he says super dumb things. It's obvious that he's trying to play to his base from time to time. This is not one of those. This is a good cross-examination, and it cost Kristi Gnome her job, right? But so next time when we show you something, him saying something really dumb, remember he's actually a really smart guy. So
he is, yeah. I actually kind of loathe the fact that he puts on that dumb guy act because it's insulting to his constituents. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, totally. So now, order of priority for why Gnome got canned. Coming in at number 3 was the immigration numbers are down. So her job was to get control over immigration and do all this ICE stuff. And hey, Trump doesn't care that she's following his orders and Stephen Miller's orders, which by the way, she said a couple of weeks ago, she's like, hey man, I'm just doing what the president and Stephen Miller said, which I thought was interesting to put them in the same sentence, right? Although that's true, it doesn't matter, Trump blames you anyway. So that was number 3. Number 2 was the affair with Corey Lewandowski, because Trump hates it when other people have affairs with women he finds to be attractive underneath him. So it drives him crazy. And Corey Lewandowski got kicked out of the White House for an alleged affair with Hope Hicks in the first term. So Trump didn't like that at all. But the main thing was the spending money on ads. I'm gonna tell you why in a second. But first, we're getting that from the breaking news from Fox News. Jackie Heinrich said a combination of her many unfortunate leadership failures, from Minnesota to the ad campaign to the allegations of an affair, so all 3 that I just mentioned, because the Minnesota disaster led to drive their numbers down on immigration and ICE. And they said, Heinrich said, this ad campaign though, that really tipped the president over the edge. And why is that, Anna? You know why, because he's so vain. And so he's like, $220 million ad campaign, that should have been on me. That should have been, should we spend it on her? No. All money should be spent on me and not anyone else. So that's why he was furious and basically moved her to an irrelevant position. Well, where she'll probably pretend to be the Venezuelan vice president.
Yeah, he's also a liar, so he could be lying and he could have thrown her under the bus. We don't really know.
No.
All I know is,
Yeah, so of course Trump's a giant liar. He could be lying at any time and almost always does. But in this case, I feel like I can tell when he's not lying because he seems genuinely shocked, according to the reporting. She said Heinrich said her source was very close to the president, which sometimes, by the way, is the actual president. Okay, so, and I know he hates it when other people get the spotlight and not him. So this one looks like it's genuine that he was pissed at her.
Yeah, I mean, look, end of the story, she's gone. So I don't think Mark Wayne Mullen would necessarily be better. He seems like someone who's got, some anger issues, to be honest with you. So I'm worried about that. But nonetheless, Kristi Gnome was not qualified for that role and did a horrible job. So I'm happy to see her gone.
Yeah.
We got to take our final break because I really want to make sure we have enough time to cover the next story. And Cenk, we're gonna get into you roasting Josh Hammer on Piers Morgan next. So come right back.
Cenk Uygur has the IQ of a tadpole.
Check out the big brain on bread.
All right, here we go. So let's go to Super Chat. Make It Make Sense says, I'm literally voting independent this year. So that's one of our conservative viewers. So there you go. Voters are moving. Collie39 says, hey guys, I'm an Irish teacher, love the show. Been in Qatar for 15 years. US-Israel war has been devastating for everyone here. Just want to give props to the Qatar Air Force for being awesome at defending us. Stop the war. So yeah, I actually am hearing that Qatar is doing a very good job at defending their country. So all right, credit to them. I love the Irish. Outside of the Palestinians and Arabs and Muslims in general, the people most opposed to Israel, their genocide and their occupation is the Irish. And so, in fact, today I heard that there are some tech guys in Silicon Valley who are Palestinian and Irish, and they've gotten together to oppose Israel. And I'm like, there you go. God, I love the Irish. Konstantin Kavira says, Cenk and Anna, the news may suck, but you're both great. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you, Konstantin. You always help, and we really appreciate it. Otaku wrote in again, Great Britain chartered planes for their people that were in the Middle East before the Iran war started. But what did America do for ours? Nothing. And that's totally true. America's stranded all over the Middle East. We can't get them out because we were too busy defending Israel. Like all of our preparations were around, oh my God, is Israel gonna be okay? Israel's driving us into this war, but are they gonna be okay? So much of our interceptors and our defense was centered around Israel and not our own bases, and no plans to get our own citizens out of dangerous way. I mean, the degree to which we're occupied is ridiculous. American Viking 73 says, Marine McGinnis apparently required surgery to repair his arm/hand due to damages from the incident. And I don't think you know this, but he was gonna come on the Young Turks to talk about it, but he had to go into surgery. So McGinnis is a hero. We'll try to talk to him once he gets out of the hospital. Darren Pierce says, love and respect from Bray, Ireland. There we go. Keep fighting. You good guys will win eventually. You guys did, so you're an inspiration to us. So I love it. Thank you, brother. Cylindrical Ferret says, Anna, I said this yesterday, but I want to repeat. Thank you for disrespecting that general. Their status/face in the Chinese sense has to be destroyed in the public. Okay.
I gotta say, you guys know how harsh I am when I criticize Israel. Out of everything I've said, that was the one moment that got me in trouble.
Yeah, no, I think
except at TYT.
So I think that viewer is talking about General Kimmett, right?
Oh my God, what a disgrace that man is. Yeah.
But I want to be clarified. No, disrespecting the general didn't get Anna in any trouble because he's an American general. No,
exactly.
When she called Kornikas a terrorist, everybody flipped out. Like there's, by the way, in the same show, she was called a jihadist. No one cared. I was called a cockroach. No one cares, right?
I'm just a lowly American after all.
Yeah, we're just Americans, so we're not precious Israelis. So that's if you criticize an Israeli, there'll be consequences. Americans, you can say anything you want about them. Marina Gate, free Palestine and free US from Israel. Here. Michael Cotavelli writes in, Israelis honestly think the government is helping the Iranians. The indoctrination is real. I've had many arguments with family in Israel for the last 2 years. Some I don't talk to anymore. They don't believe anything that debunks the propaganda they're exposed to. That is so true, Michael. Thank you for writing that in.
Cenk Uygur has the IQ of a tadpole.
You are a stiff.
Young Turks, the online news show. Cenk Uygur, Anna Kasparian, and Noon Mountain. Noon Mountain just joined by hitting the join button below. We love you guys, and we can't do the show without you, so we really appreciate that you support honest news. It makes a big difference to us. And I was just telling Michael Cotavelli, who wrote it on Super Chat, saying his family in Israel is so indoctrinated, they really genuinely think they're helping the Iranian people. Don't I know it, brother? And it's not just the Israelis. Every country gets indoctrinated into their own propaganda. I know plenty of Turks who believe outrageous and nonsensical things just because of Turkish propaganda. So
yeah, same.
Yeah,
same. About Turks.
About Turks, yeah, I knew it. These Armenians, what are we gonna do with them? All right, anyway. All right, so let's keep going.
All right, let's do it.
There's an easy way to tell who hates America. They kind of say it. If you call America a terrorist organization for killing one of the world's most evil dictators, for example, I don't know, you hate America.
So I've heard the talking point a million times that Iran is the #1 sponsor of terrorism. It is something that the war hawks love to say. I have actually never once heard a coherent definition of terrorism and then a demonstration that they're the worst of it. The IDF is the worst terrorist organization in the region. Let's get real. The United States of America is arguably the worst terrorist organization in the world.
Well, those statements that you just heard from Dave Smith have led to a very salty Ben Shapiro, who historically speaking wasn't a big fan of deplatforming people or urging shows to avoid platforming certain voices, but suddenly he wants to, go after Piers Morgan for having the audacity of inviting voices who are critical of Israel. And yes, in that particular clip, you heard Dave Smith be critical of the United States for getting dragged into a war on Israel's behalf. But there are some other statements made on Piers Morgan's show that I want to get into, which Ben Shapiro seems to have no problem with, regardless of how morally bankrupt those statements happen to be. Before we get to them, Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, so I've had to deal with these same guys on Piers Morgan. We're gonna talk about that in a minute and all the terrible things that they say. But I also want to talk about who's more obsessed with Israel, Israel's critics or Israel's supporters? I think that answer is very clear, but let's get into it after Anna shows you the videos.
So I actually want to start off with something that Matt Schlap, who has been accused by now multiple males of sexually assaulting. I don't know what happened to those cases, but nonetheless, he has been accused in the past. He says something that was so utterly disgusting on Piers Morgan's show. They were having a conversation about the opening strikes carried out by the United States and Israel against Iran. And in those opening strikes, a elementary school, all girls elementary school was struck, and at least 165 people were killed, most of them little girls. And so with that context in mind, get a load of what Matt Schlap had to say about it.
Even if it was an Iranian missile that was fired in response to the attack from Israel and the United States, right? Even if it was an Iranian missile, those girls would still be alive today if the United States and Israel had not launched the attack. So you are right. We don't know who launched the missile, but we know that if the US and Israel had not attacked a country that poses no serious threat to them, Israel has hundreds of nuclear weapons, America has thousands, that those girls would be alive.
Okay, but I would also say to that it is indisputable that it is indisputable to me. Well, hang on, Matt, please. Hang on, please. Let me finish my point.
So in case you had difficulty hearing that, Matt Schlap said they would be alive in a burqa. So better off dead, right? Am I right? I mean, just loathsome, disgusting human being. And Cenk, you were on that panel as well. I watched the entirety of that episode. Absolute disgrace hearing what both Josh Hammer and Matt Schlap had to say. Before we get to Josh Hammer, though, your thoughts?
Yeah, first, serious then light. So look, these are the same people who said, oh, we're going to liberate the Iranian people. We care so much about them. Now we start the war and he's like, oh, who cares? They're better off dead than in a burqa, so we killed them. So when they tell you the next time, like they did in Iraq, oh, we're going to liberate the Iraqi people, we're going to be greeted as liberators. Oh, we're going to help the Iranian protesters because we care so much about the Iranian people. Remember Matt Schlap telling you afterwards, who cares about the Iranian people? They were going to be Muslim anyway, so we just murdered them. So he's a disgusting pig. Now on
he doesn't upset Ben Shapiro at all, by the way. Ben Shapiro has directed his ire at Dave Smith, a Jewish American, by the way, because he dares to be critical of Israel. But when it comes to Matt Schlap making excuses for the slaughter of little girls in Iran, which, by the way, please do some research, guys. Anyone who thinks that everyone in Iran is wearing a burqa 24/7 is like the most ignorant person. Do your research. There are plenty of people in Iran. There are Christian Armenians in Iran who go to church. They're not wearing burqas. Like, please, I know there's a lot of propaganda in the United States, but we are being misled like crazy about what actually takes place in Iran.
And there's a big difference between a headdress and a burqa. But anyways, now to the lighter stuff. You guys, when I go on Piers, watch out for Easter eggs. Like, I don't think anybody caught it, but I threw in a reference to pummeling a crotch because Matt Schlap was on the show, okay? He's the guy who was accused of pummeling a guy's crotch. So I said maybe Israel's pummeling his crotch or something like that. Okay, so now, but my favorite comment wasn't mine. It was the viewers. Because I read the comments a little bit and they're like, where'd they get Count Chocula and Kenny Rogers to represent the Israeli side?
Dude, the Dracula comment is amazing because I see it, I definitely see it. Which takes us to Josh Hammer, right? Josh Hammer is very triggered by you, Cenk, but you roasted him and I thought it was pretty hilarious. So let's go to that moment.
I think it would be very easy to dunk on Cenk Uygur, who I'm always reminded has the morality of a cockroach and the IQ of a tadpole. I mean, it would be very easy for me to kind of just launch off, and explain why this morbidly obese fat oaf just continues to bloviate and find himself on the wrong side of every single geopolitical issue.
Israel has bought our government. Hold on, Israel has bought our government lock, stock, and barrel. And did they do something else as well, with this Operation Epstein's Fury, in terms of getting blackmail on people? Yes, it's entirely possible because Epstein in every interaction was trying to help Israel, procured cyber weapons for Israel. Hey, Matt,
disaster.
You were wrong about Iraq because you serve Israel. You're wrong about Iran because you serve Israel. Don't worry, you'll get the check. Don't worry, you'll get the check. So for example, I say that Josh is Israel first. Yeah, sure, I know.
You are clinically.
Anyway,
what is wrong with you?
So Josh, I say Josh is Israel first, and then you guys flip out over it. Then you pan to one shot of Josh, and there's his book with Israel in the title. Israel, everybody serve Israel.
I have clerked for a federal appeals judge. I have spoken at Yale Law School, Harvard Law School, published constitutional. Literally put my hand on the Bible.
It's right behind you, dude.
Taken my oath
it's
to
right
United
behind
Constitution.
You.
I have
That's
been a
your
citizen
book.
of one country and
Why
one
don't you
country.
write a book about America?
I have to say, man, the producers going to the wide shot to get the book in the background was pretty amazing. Okay, that was amazing. I have been some sort of lawyer. I forget what kind of lawyer he said. I have spoken at Yale. Like, calm down, dude. It's gonna be okay.
Okay, are we comparing schools? Don't make me do it, Count. Okay,
no, please don't do it.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, but look, he made a comment about my looks. Count Chocula is making a comment about looks? Come on, bro, come on. But seriously, guys, so they just flippantly say these things. If you said it about Jewish folks, they'd lose their minds and you'd be canceled forever. But they just, like Nazis called people cockroaches. Like that's literally Nazi propaganda 101. Dehumanize them and they would call Jewish people cockroaches. So now Josh is turning around, he's like, these Muslim cockroaches. They've become exactly what they most feared and despised.
Yeah, and it's amazing because it was a big scandal that I called Jonathan Conricus, a propagandist for Israel, a terrorist, because he has lied about all of the slaughter of innocent people, including children, of course, in Gaza. But when I was called a jihadist, that's totally fine. You're called a cockroach and the R word by Josh Hammer, totally fine. No controversy about that whatsoever. So look, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If they're gonna come at us with the ad hominems, we're gonna dish it out too.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah, by the way, speaking of ad hominems, this lawyer in the UK who represents Israel in a lot of these debates, and I've gone on Piers Morgan, this woman named Natasha, she's now suing Piers Morgan because now the lawfare has begun. Since they've lost the debate completely on Morgan and every other show, they're starting to just try to sue people into silence. She, in a different debate, called me a parasite. And now two different people representing Israel have called me a parasite as well. These are classic, German propaganda from back in the day. They're now using it against their opponents. When Israel does it, it is deeply ironic. Finally, on whoever's more obsessed with Israel. Well, no, I confess that I'm definitely obsessed with Israel. Why? Because there's no other country that's taken $300 billion from us, that's pushed us into $8 trillion worth of wars, that just pushed us into a disastrous war. If Brazil did that or Paraguay did that, then I'd be obsessed with them. But who's more obsessed? I mean, look at what Ben Shapiro is doing. That's a cancel Dave Smith, cancel Piers Morgan, cancel everyone. Because everything for him revolves around Israel. Larry Ellison and Miriam Adelson used to donate to the Democrats when the Democrats were in power. They now donate to Trump and the Republicans when they're in power because they don't care about any other issue but Israel. And since they're so obsessed and they've bought 94% of Congress and they're forcing us to do things that are against American interest, yes, I will continue to be obsessed with Israel until we drive them out of our government.
Agreed.
All right.
All right.
We gotta go. When we come back, super interesting. We're going to talk to the two of the leading Senate candidates in Illinois. They're having a primary soon, obviously on the Democratic side, and we've got a representative, a US representative, and the lieutenant governor of Illinois coming up next.
Cenk Uygur has the morality of a cockroach.
I buried those cockroaches!
Welcome back to The Revolution on the TYT Network. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. So we're gonna do something interesting today. This is something we've started to do recently that I really like and you guys have enjoyed. So today we are going to talk to two of the folks running for Senate in Illinois. So there's three major candidates, Robin Kelly, who's gonna join us first, Juliana Stratton, and Raja Krishnamurthy. But Krishnamurthy has decided not to join us, so he's apparently doesn't want your vote. So that's interesting, and you should take note of that. And they're looking to replace Dick Durbin. So we're going to do the same format we've done before in Iowa. We're gonna do 20 minutes for each of the candidates, ask them very similar questions, and obviously then you guys can make up your mind in a way that is relatively fair and objective. All right, joining me first is US Representative Robin Kelly, running for Senate in Illinois. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Well, no problem. Okay, I'm gonna ask a little lighter questions at the end. That'll be a little bit fun. But first, we start with serious questions, very important ones. This is kind of a plain spoken one, which is, how do we know that we can trust you if you get the Senate seat?
I would ask you to look at my past record. I've worked on every level of government, local, state, county, and now the federal government for 13 years. And I walk, my talk. I do what I say I'm gonna do. My staff is very responsive and respectful to things that I demand. And that's what I would ask you, to look at what I've done before, talk to people, talk to my constituents, talk to my mayors and people that have worked with me, that you can trust me, that I'm not going to promise more than I can promise. And I'm gonna do, if at all possible, what I say I'm going to do.
Yeah, so Representative Kelly, what is something that you really wanted to get done in politics that you think you did get accomplished?
That I did well. I have a huge healthcare portfolio and the work is not done yet. I'm not saying that, but I'm the one that brought the issue of maternal mortality and morbidity to Congress. Too many women die in the United States, period. And too many Black women die, 3 to 1 times white women. And I was able to extend the postpartum coverage period from 60 days to a year. And I know that absolutely saves lives. I've done work around gun violence too. That's what I ran on. And we passed the first bill in 30 years, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. And my part of that was the trafficking, because people always talk about Chicago has the toughest gun laws, but look at all the shootings. But, if no one else around you has tough gun laws like Indiana, Wisconsin, Kentucky. So my part of it was the trafficking. And I was proud to be able to get that passed. Still more work to do. Not saying that it's not, but we've made some steps.
Yeah, okay, so now let's get to some funding issues. So we understand that, obviously 94% of Congress is taking money from the Israeli lobby at some point, but I wanted to see, number one, have you taken money from AIPAC in the past? And number two, what is your current stance?
I have taken money from the portal of AIPAC. I think AIPAC may have given me, I don't know, $3,000 a while ago, but I didn't know that this until last year, that there's a portal. So people that have known me even before I came to Congress, they put money through that portal. But I did announce that I would not take any more money from AIPAC. Not that they've ever given me a lot of money, but no, I don't take any money from AIPAC.
Any other Israeli lobby group that you take money from?
No, I don't think I've ever gotten any money from anybody.
Okay, and how about corporate PAC money? What's your stance on that?
I do take corporate PAC money, but again, I tell people, check the record. I know who put me in office, and it's my constituents, and that's how I vote, no matter who gives me money. And, like I'd say, if someone gives me $1,000 or $2,500, that is not gonna sway me from what I think is the right thing to do. Again, I know why I'm there. I know who I serve and who puts me in office, and that's who I work for.
So why do you think that we haven't been able to pass something as simple as paid family leave in Congress. It polls at 84%, over 90% with Democrats, and even 74% with Republican voters. So really among the American people, there's no objection to it at all. We're among the very few countries in the entire world that don't have it. So why can't Democrats pass something as simple as paid family leave?
Because I think, even people believe in universal background checks. There's a lot of things that the majority of people believe in, but if you don't have the right people at the table at the same time voting, things don't get passed. And I mean, it becomes a numbers, game also. And, in the Senate, we need 60 votes, to get things passed. I know people agree with it. I agree with it. And, but we have to have, 218 people in the House and 60 people in the Senate that agree with it, and a president that won't veto it.
So, Representative Kelly, I have a theory that is shared by a lot of Americans that that a lot of your colleagues are taking money, and that is why none of these bills pass, even though they're very popular. So we can't negotiate drug prices, even though everyone, literally everyone, wants lower drug prices outside of Big Pharma, but Big Pharma owns Congress. Okay. So, well, that's your colleagues, right? Both Republicans and Democrats. So then my question is, how do you get a bill passed knowing that a lot of your own Democratic colleagues will block it because they're taking money from different corporate interests?
Well, I'm on Energy and Commerce, a healthcare subcommittee, and we were able to lower the insulin price to $35, and then there were other drug prices that we lowered. So again, baby steps, and we need, to do more. We need to be able to negotiate every drug, not just, the 10 that were picked. And but also the other thing is, this is where the village comes in, and you're the village. The public, has to make their voices heard, and very, very important. We were able to pass, with the help of 17 Republicans, the ACA premium tax cuts, and I give credit to the public. That's why we've been able to do the things we do. The reason they didn't wipe out the Affordable Care Act is because the public, stood up, showed up, and showed out. So we need that help too. No matter if it's Democrats or Republicans or independents that you have to speak to, that we need the public's help to put the pressure on.
So let's talk about the healthcare system, since that's a huge thing we have to fix. So let's start with, what do you think is the right fix for the healthcare system?
We need universal healthcare. I know we use the term Medicare for all. I'm on the Medicare for all caucus, but we need to bring all the stakeholders together and iron this thing out. There's no reason in the richest country in the history of the world that everyone doesn't have health care. My district is urban, suburban, and rural. So I see it from every angle. And, I had a farmer that told me he had to drive 60 miles when his wife was delivering a baby. She wasn't quite ready. He drove 60 miles back home, and 20 or 30 minutes later, she was ready. So 60 miles back. If you have a stroke or, God forbid, or a gunshot wound, you couldn't last that long. So I believe in Medicare for all. I know, we have to talk about it and iron it out, but we must have, healthcare for everyone. I use an example that tears at me a little bit. I was celebrating my 20th wedding anniversary with my husband in Canada. He got sick, and he was in the hospital, an emergency room, 3 days. And his bill was $800. That would never happen in the United States of America.
Yeah, I mean, you might lose your house if you had to stay in the hospital 3 days in America.
Definitely.
Yeah. So huge numbers of Americans say they want universal health care. Almost all the Democrats that in Congress that I talk to say they want universal health care. Yet we don't even come close to getting universal health care. So what is a strategy that could work in terms of actually getting it passed? What steps would we have to go through?
Well, I do think, there's I'm running on a platform of people over profit. So one thing we have to do is get millionaires, billionaires, and corporations to pay their fair share. So we have the money to do, some of the things that we want to do. I'm not asking for more, but at least pay their fair share. But I do think we need to bring everybody to the table, so we can iron it out, not, us saying you're just going to do this. I think that we need to hear from everyone about it. There's a bipartisan doctors caucus, and I listen to them, sometimes also, but a lot of different people. I've talked to many different groups. Like I said, healthcare is my biggest portfolio, but I think we need to bring everybody to the table, and that we need to set a goal. By this time, we are going to do this. And even if we have to, build upon it, we can't get everything done at once, but we need to get it done sooner than later.
So if the Democrats capture the Senate, and if they have, that means that almost certainly they also have the House. In the next 2 years, what is a major thing that you can achieve in the Senate while Trump's still president?
He's an interesting person, as we all know. That's one word. But I believe, if Democrats take over, he might even have a different look, because I grew up in New York. I grew up, with this man, and some of the things he says now, that is not what he said before. You know what I mean? So I call him a Trumplican, not a Democrat or a Republican. But I think that, we need to look at healthcare. We have to look at immigration reform. We have to. And I think that we need, even with him being president, but depending on the numbers that we have, he might go along with the program. When I think about the Epstein files and what happened there, that, they will no, then all of a sudden, people voted for it. And the same thing with the premium, tax cut, that was in the House, not the Senate. But I think those things, I think some more around gun violence prevention. And also the other thing, I'm naming a lot of things, but also building back the Inflation Reduction Act, because, he paused a lot of the projects, and that was the biggest investment in the environment. And I think we can build back some of those things too. I think when he doesn't have his army around him, with Repubs on both sides, I don't think he'll be so big and bad.
Yeah, you could build it back better, maybe.
No, yeah, we can't go back to, even when we take over, it can't be what was before. That was not good enough. There were too many people, that couldn't punch their ticket to the middle class. When I think about young people, imagine, could they ever buy a house, or could they even afford to have kids with the cost of childcare, which needs to be capped?
So you mentioned immigration reform first. So that's another one where there was a group of 14 compromise a million years ago. I didn't like it because they were basically had to be indentured servants for 14 years. But even that they said was too lenient, right? A pathway to citizenship that takes 14 long years, right? So now that's totally dead. Now that's a thing that the Trump voters are not divided on. They're divided on war, they're divided on Israel, etc., but they're not divided on immigration. So they don't really want to budge an inch. So how in the world do we get immigration reform?
But what you say, that they don't really want to budge an inch. I said my district is urban, suburban, and rural. I have 4,500 farms. Most of those people don't look like me and don't vote like me. They want immigration reform. The Chamber of Commerce which can be a little to the right sometimes, or more to the right, they want immigration reform, because maybe not for the moral reason, but for the economic reason. They are hurting because of what he is doing now. I've spoken to many a farmer, and the people that they have working, with them, they want to see immigration reform. Chambers of Commerce, when you look at healthcare, how many people are doctors or nurses that don't even come from this country? So I do think we would have more help. Again, the pressure needs to be put on members of Congress and the Senate that this is what the village wants. But I think we can get that done, for moral and economic reasons. And when you think about over 11 million people pay into a system they don't get benefits from, when you think about the dreamers, they just need to become American. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Representative Kelly, there's the War Powers Act resolution, and a lot of Democrats who said they were against the war say they are actually going to fund the war. Do you think those Senate Democrats who vote to fund the war are wrong?
I don't want the war funded. I just feel like we have issues in this country. We have affordability issues, and then we're in another war. And the peace president supposedly said he wanted to be the peace president. So how do we have money to fund this? But then we're talking about, the big ugly bill is not in full effect yet. After November 2026, if we don't take back a chamber, do something that, millions and millions of more people will lose their health care. You already cut SNAP for people, lower the age. So, we could take that money and use it for people here who are suffering, who are, just not, that they can thrive, not just survive. Now, I'm not saying, the regime was a good regime. It was not. And Venezuela was not a good regime, but are we going to run around and take out, all the leaders we don't like? A lot of us don't like him. Should someone come and take him out, or giving Argentina $20 billion to bail them out? We should not be doing that. We have too many people with too many needs in this country.
Right, yes, taking out world leaders is not a great idea for international relationships, that's true. And so, all right, now let's go to the lighter part. Deep dish or tavern pizza?
Deep dish or what?
Or tavern pizza?
You know what? I didn't even know what tavern pizza was. I'm from New York, so I'm used to thin. I heard that term tonight, believe it or not.
Okay, interesting. All right, so we asked that only because you're running in Illinois, and obviously Chicago known for deep dish and tavern.
Right. No, I'm a thin crust girl.
Okay, clear. What's your favorite TV show these days?
Oh my gosh, my favorite TV show. That's a good question. I've been watching a lot of Netflix, but I'm just going to tell you my dirty pleasure is Dancing with the Stars.
Sure, of course. Did you see the episode Tucker Carlson was on back in the day?
I don't remember that one, but maybe I wanted to forget that on purpose.
Yeah, no, he was on, I think just for one episode, got voted out immediately. Okay, and what's the extracurricular activity you did in high school, if any? Like sports, band, anything along those lines?
Oh, I did a lot. I was in the theater club, going to the theater, not actually acting. I was captain of the girls' basketball team. So those two things.
All right, so you're a hooper. All right, last one's a serious, back to serious. So if there's one thing you could change to fix our government, what would it be?
I would go to making millionaires, billionaires, and corporations pay their fair share, because when they do, we could do so much more around housing, healthcare, raising the minimum wage from $7.25 an hour, investing in the environment and economic development and economic growth. And as I said, capping childcare costs. So, we could do more with more money. And then I'll just sneak in campaign finance reform.
Okay, I think people are gonna appreciate that you snuck that in. Okay, Representative Robin Kelly running for Senate in Illinois to replace Dick Durbin. Thank you so much for joining us on TYT, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, and have a good night.
You too. All right, guys, now next up is going to be Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. She's running for the same seat, and we're gonna ask her similar questions. So are we taking a break, guys? Yeah, so we gotta take the break to bring her on, and then we'll come right back, and I want you to meet the other candidate. Make sure you're listening to both so you can make a fair decision on who to vote for in Illinois. We'll be right back. We are having conversations with candidates running for Dick Durbin's seat. That is the Illinois Senate seat. Very, very important. Just talked to Representative Robin Kelly. Now we're going to talk to Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton from Illinois, obviously. Thank you for joining us, Lieutenant Governor Stratton. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yep, no problem. All right, so first question is, plain spoken one, how do we know we can trust you?
How do you know you can trust me? Well, I think about what I've always done as a leader, both before becoming an elected leader and since that time. You know, when I think about when I was elected to state representative, that was 10 years ago. And I ran for office because my mother, I was caring for my mother. I was her primary caregiver. She had Alzheimer's. And I ran because there was an effort to strip away healthcare from seniors like my mother. That's what motivated me. And I ran against a state representative, a 13-year incumbent, and I won because I knew that government should and can be a force for good. I can tell you that when I got to the House, there were lots of people who told me, you know, you're new here. You just kind of sit down and learn the ropes. You don't need to speak too much. You don't need to do too much. But I got to work and I rolled up my sleeves because I knew that I was there to represent the people. And I passed 10 bills that I was the chief sponsor in the House, 10 bills that got signed into law because I knew that I wasn't there to just sit around and just kind of learn the ropes. I was there to deliver for the people that I represented. And the same thing happened when I ran alongside Governor Pritzker as his lieutenant governor. We ran as a ticket. We said we wanted to get big things done for the people of Illinois, and we look now 7 years later, the things that we set out to do have gotten done. We've raised the minimum wage. We've put us on a path to a clean energy future. We've made Illinois a true island for reproductive freedom in the Midwest. We've passed common sense gun legislation, including an assault weapons ban, and we've created thousands of jobs. So that's an example of not just talking the talk, but walking the walk. It's what I want to do in Washington, D.C. In fact, I always say that I want to take the Illinois blueprint with me to Washington to get things done for the people.
Okay, so the next question is going to make you choose, because what I was going to ask you is, what is something that you got into politics for that you think you might have accomplished? You gave us a list of that to some degree just now. So of those, maybe the way to ask it is, which one are you most proud of?
Oh, well, I mean, there's several things that I'm very proud of. One that I'll speak of in particular is the Birth Equity Initiative, which I led. You know, I called the governor a couple of years ago and said in 2024 and just said, I'm really proud of what we've done to protect reproductive freedom in our state, but Black women are still dying at a rate that's 3 times that of our white counterparts. And and I said, we need to do something about this. And to his credit, he said, absolutely. And so I was able to lead what is called the Birth Equity Initiative in our state. And I did that recognizing my own experience as a Black woman, being the mother of 4 daughters and hearing from my daughters about, just some of their own concerns and the fears of their friends of giving birth in a system that wasn't always built for them. And so I gathered a group of Black women, doulas and midwives, and we had a wonderful conversation about how they are on the ground. They know how to shift this system, how to provide more care that's needed. And because of my leadership here in Illinois, now doulas and midwives and lactation consultants are covered whether you have private insurance or Medicaid. And I'm really proud of that. And that's an example of when I said that I ran in the first place to really just make sure that we expand access to healthcare for Illinoisans. This is another example of expanding access to healthcare. I've been fighting for healthcare since I got to elected office, and I certainly want to make sure we keep doing that in Washington, especially with millions of Americans being stripped of the care they deserve.
Okay, so I want to come back to healthcare in a minute, but first, now we understand that a significant percentage of politicians in this country and legislators have taken money from AIPAC or the Israeli lobby before, obviously a hot issue now. So have you taken money from AIPAC before, and what is your current stance?
I've never gotten money from the PAC. I'm certainly proud to have a broad coalition of individual supporters, and my focus is really on making sure that there's a real path to sustained peace in the region and a two-state solution. As I've said over and over again, I don't believe that either Donald Trump or Prime Minister Netanyahu share those same goals and are working with the best intentions to move us toward that goal.
And so would you take money from the Israeli lobby at this point or no?
Well, as I said, I'm continuing to build a broad coalition, but I haven't gotten any money from the PAC.
Okay. How about corporate PAC money? Do you take that?
I do not. I've made the commitment not to accept one single dime of corporate PAC money in this race, and I'm the only candidate who has made that commitment.
Did you take it in the past?
I believe that so first of all, in this race, I have not taken any corporate PAC money, but before when I served ran for state representative a number of years ago, but I can't use any of that money in this race, any state money in this race.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
And if I can just say, one of the reasons why I made that commitment is because when people look at what's happening in Washington, D.C., they really do believe, at least what I'm hearing from people every single day, is that they feel really fed up with the fact that it seems like corporate special interest get the red carpet rolled out for them, and that the people in Washington forget who they really were elected to represent. And it was important for me to make a strong stance that I'm not going to accept corporate PAC money, and I'm going to fight for campaign finance reform, which is why I'm the only candidate that was endorsed by End Citizens United. So I want to see us end Citizens United. I want to get corporate PAC money out of politics and fight for campaign finance reform, which I will do when I get to Washington. And I also want to put an end to congressional stock trading.
So let's stay on that topic. There's many laws that are very popular in the country. One example is paid family leave. It polls at 84%. In fact, I often ask on the show, do we really live in a democracy if you can't pass a bill that's at 84%? So now the Democrats have not been able to pass it when they're in charge either. And so when it comes to certain issues, that's an obvious one that's very popular. Another one is negotiating drug prices at over 90% in popularity, and yet somehow magically the Democrats can't pass it either. So obviously money has an enormous effect in Washington. So if you're in the Senate, how do you get around that fact? Because it's not just Republicans, it'll also be some of your Democratic colleagues taking money from drug companies, et cetera. So how do you get a bill passed in that environment?
Well, that goes back to what I just said of what people are so frustrated with right now. It is an environment that seems to reward people who take corporate, PAC money, and I think it leads us to see a government that doesn't have political courage. And I always say that my role as a senator will be to pass common sense legislation. It will be to use my bully pulpit to speak out and hold this administration accountable and speak about the issues that matter to people. But my role will also be to push our party to be bold, to be courageous, because that's what people are looking for. We've here in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois, we've been looking at what's happening with Operation Midway Blitz for several months in the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois. And I always say, when I'm looking at people out in the streets saying no kings or hands off my health care and all the things that we hear people saying, that's an example of them saying that's the leadership that I'm looking for in Washington. So we need new leadership. We need new energy. We need people who are going to be bold. We need fighters and not folders. And by the way, I'm the only one in this race that has made it clear that I'm not going to support Chuck Schumer for leader, because I really believe that we need the energy to meet this particular moment and get things done for the people.
Interesting. All right, how would you fix our healthcare system? What do you think is the best solution?
I'm going to fight to pass Medicare for all. I mean, again, I don't want to keep going back to that first story, but it's true. I got into running for office because of watching healthcare being stripped away from seniors like my mother. And I believe that healthcare is a right, not a privilege. I believe that I'm talking to too many Illinoisans who are making a decision between going to pay their bills versus going to the doctor, buying groceries or paying their rent versus getting the care that they need. And that is a false choice. And so we need to make sure that healthcare is available for everyone. And I also just want to point out some of the real health inequities that we are seeing. I talked about the Birth Equity Initiative earlier, but there are communities here right in the state of Illinois where you can go, even in the city of Chicago, you might go 20 miles away and there's a 20-year life expectancy difference just based on your zip code. So that's not okay. And we need to make sure where there are healthcare deserts and at a time. And remember, why is Donald Trump and this administration stripping away healthcare from so many millions of Americans? To give a tax break to the ultra wealthy. It's wrong. So I'm going to fight for Medicare for all. I'm going to fight for universal healthcare so that everyone who needs a doctor can see one.
So stay on that for one more second. So that's the urgency of the situation. But when you go to fight for Medicare for all, you'll see, of course, every Republican's opposed to it, but not just that, a great number of, again, your Democratic colleagues will be opposed to it. So in that environment, what are steps we can take to get eventually to being able to pass that bill?
Yeah, so let me just talk a little bit about some of the skill sets that I bring. I am a lawyer, but for 2 decades, I served as I had my own alternative dispute resolution firm, and I did mediation and arbitration. And those skills have served me very well as an elected official. The ability to speak, to be understood, to listen, to understand, to make sure that we move from positions to underlying needs and interests. And I just have to say right off the bat, and we've talked about this already, one of the big issues is what's happening with, one of the big issues is the money that we see, including big pharma and with healthcare industry in terms of that corporate money coming into being influenced in Washington. And, for example, one of my key opponent, Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy, has taken the most money from the healthcare industry out of anyone in Congress. And when we get on the debate stage or we're in forums and we're talking about passing Medicare for all, he says, well, it's a nice idea, but I don't know if we can go there. Well, of course, because many of the same donors to your campaign spend millions of dollars lobbying against Medicare for all. So I think this is a time that we need real courage. Let me tell you what we've done here in Illinois. When you asked about how do we trust, here's another example of how we've worked to expand healthcare. Governor Pritzker and I just announced this week $1 billion of medical debt that has been erased for people. And that's an example because we know that there are so many working families that because of no fault of their own, some medical emergency, an accident, a premature birth, whatever it was, they now are saddled with medical debt. And that just leaves them, not able to, pay their bills or start a business or pay for their children's, college, whatever it is. So we have to think outside of the box and make as much progress as we can. I think here in Illinois, with what we've done to expand access to healthcare, lower the cost of prescription drugs, eliminate medical debt, those are examples that I want to take to Washington. But all the way, we have to keep thinking big about what's possible and stop with the let's give people the bare minimum. I want to say one more quick thing. I have a daughter. I have 4 daughters. I mentioned. One of them is under the ACA exchange. And she told me, she called at the end of last year. She said, Mom, let me tell you how much my premium is going up. And when she talked about her premium going up, she said, so to afford my health care, I'm going to have to get the benefits, the least amount of benefits. And I can tell you, I don't want that for my own daughter, and I don't want it for anyone to have to think about what is the lowest level of healthcare benefits they can get because it's too expensive. Not in this country. So we have to be bold. We have to have leaders that are going to push our party to be more courageous. We need to have leaders who understand how to help people understand the underlying needs and interests and how we can strategically work towards those goals.
Okay, now we move on to the lighter portion here real quick. Lieutenant Governor Stratton, you're running in Illinois, so a deep dish or tavern pizza?
You know, I'm going with a good tavern pizza.
Okay, pretty authentic.
Yeah, I like a good tavern pizza. All pizza is good, but give me tavern.
All right, what's your favorite TV show these days?
Oh goodness, TV show. You know without a doubt that I am not watching a lot of television while I am on this campaign trail. But if I were to pick a TV show, I would have to say, a documentary about the America's Next Top Model.
Oh yeah, I saw the trailer for that. That was super interesting.
Not pretty. It's not pretty.
No, it's not. Ironically, not pretty. Okay, and in high school, did you have an extracurricular activity? Sports, band, theater?
I was captain of the pom-pom squad. I've always loved to dance, and I still, I always say I get two things started. I get the buffet started, and I get the dance floor started, still to this day.
Well, I get one of those started. I don't think it's going to be.
See you on the dance floor soon.
Oh yeah, that's the one. Okay, last one's back to serious. If there's one thing you could change about government, what would it be?
One thing that I would change about government genuinely is that we would get to a place where we remember why we're there. As I said before, government should be a partner to the people. And we shouldn't go to, whether it's at the state level or the federal level or any level of government, thinking that we know what's best for the communities that we serve. I believe that those that are closest to the problem are indeed closest to the solution. I believe that we should be working in partnership with those who know and love their communities, who have the best ideas for how to solve the challenges of their community. And I believe that we should always recognize that when we go to serve, that we should be held accountable by the people who elected us. And that's the kind of leader that I've always been, and that's the kind of leader I will be when I get to the United States Senate. And the job is not done just because you get elected, but when you get there, that's when the real work begins. That's when you have to deliver for people and get things done. And that's why I'm so proud of the record that I've had as Lieutenant Governor and as state rep. And it's why I'm especially proud to be running to represent the great state of Illinois in the United States Senate.
All right, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, running for the Senate seat in Illinois. It's open now because Dick Durbin's retiring. We really appreciate you joining us. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, guys, now you've seen two of the candidates. As we said earlier, Raja Krishnamurthy chose not to join us, so apparently he doesn't want your vote. That was Lieutenant Governor Stratton, and earlier we talked to Representative Robin Kelly. Those are your two major choices in that Senate seat in Illinois. Now it's your choice. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it, and we'll see you tomorrow.